This episode is brought to you in part by Hindsight. Hindsight is a new science fiction novel by author Matthew Keegan. Hindsight is a time travel adventure that Tim Truax at the Nerd Room calls a brilliant tapestry of time travel and history that will leave you questioning everything, impossible to put down. Find the links to Hindsight at talkstarwars.co.uk/hindsight and order your copy today. This episode is also brought to you by the Talk Star Wars Patreon community. If you'd like to support what we do now and help us expand our programming, head to patreon.com/talkstarwars and become a patron. In return, you'll get an exclusive daily podcast, a monthly newsletter, Facebook Live sessions, priority release podcasts, and monthly prize giveaways and a whole lot more. You'll also get access to our VIP-only Facebook group. This group contains a global community of Star Wars fans that have become dear friends. So head to patreon.com/talkstarwars today and become a TSW patron. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast of talkstarwars.co.uk. Hello everyone, welcome back to Talk Star Wars. I'm Mark.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Paul.
And this is episode 104 LOM. Yeah, we're gonna pursue this until it's in the ground, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, after next week's 105 D4, I think that might be it. But I'm very much
1066.
Oh yeah, maybe that. Maybe that'll be it. Okay. Yeah, but I like it, and the cover art this week is absolutely sublime.
It is good, very good,
and it's going to divide fandom, I think.
Really?
Yeah,
because some
there's a whole
people
thing, right? Some of them are
mistaken.
Zukas, and some of them are Forlom for this character.
Yeah, and some of them are mistaken.
Yeah, some of them think it's Forlom, and the others are wrong. Yeah, that's right. I put my flag in the ground, and I'm sticking with it.
Oh, hang on, let me just check to make sure. Okay, no, I'm not with you.
You're not with. You're not what? Sorry.
Hang on. No, that's not. Sorry, it is Forlom, isn't it?
Yes, it is Forlom. Yeah, for
Sorry,
love of
yes.
money. It's a droid designation, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got confused because they've both got those sort of bug eyes, but which is probably where it went wrong actually on the action figure thing.
I would think.
Yeah, no, I accept. Looking at it, that no, I'm mistaken on first glance. It is actually Forlom, and it is the Forlom I have always associated with Forlom. Yeah. I just wasn't paying attention.
I always forget there's an angle on Forlom, isn't there?
In what respect?
In that people think Forlom, what Forlom isn't actually Forlom.
Yes, that's right. That's what we're just saying. There's two. There's another bug-eyed one that's Zukas. It looks like a bug, but he was branded Forlom on the Kenner Vintage Toys, and this character was branded as Zukas. When Forlom is obviously a droid designation, isn't it?
Cool. That means some people out there have got a rather expensive limited edition, yeah?
Oh, I don't think they ever changed it.
Oh, really?
I think now
limited in the end.
Now they're doing like Hot Toys do a Forlom, and it's this character. So I don't think it's ever been changed, and that's why there's that division. But we've already spoken about Forlom more than any other podcast in the history of the world. So it might be time to move on.
Blast Points.
Maybe Blast Points.
Yeah, Blast Points could. I imagine Blast Points could do an episode of just about Forlom, and it would be hilarious.
Yeah, well, we can do that. We can get the first half of the show all about Forlom. Just send your emails and your voicemails in. Any position you have on Forlom, share it with us, and we'll burn up some time on it. So how are you guys doing?
Still got a bit of cough. Pretty good, to be honest.
You still trying to fight off your cold, Paul?
Oh, I just had a pathetic cough for about 22 years, and I'm going to prove it. It's got nothing to do with excessive alcohol and cigarettes.
I'm looking forward to the end of January.
Why is that?
It's just been rammed. Like I've got but friends that have had birthdays again this year. Like it's just bloody rude.
So selfish.
I just feel like not for nothing as well. But I've got friends who know each other and just alternate. It's so much. It's so much easier on those around you. Just don't be so selfish.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it today when I looked up and it'd been 1 month since Christmas.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Where on earth has it gone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously in the run up to Christmas, everything was a bit hectic for me. So
yeah,
what with stuff going on outside.
Yeah,
Star Wars.
it has been for me.
And then obviously, Last Jedi as well. You know,
Last
there was
Jedi,
that.
yeah, and we did the meetup
Jedi.
last week as well. Boy,
We
you
did.
you missed a great day, a
It
really
was
good
good.
day meeting up with the VIPs. Seeing
How do
Last
you know
Jedi.
I didn't have a great day?
No, I'm sure you had a great day, but you didn't have the great day. We had
a great weekend.
the great day. I'm sure you did. I'm glad you did, mate. I'm glad.
Yeah, glad to hear it.
You needed that time to
Oh,
decompress.
we're doing it again real soon.
Good. Well done. Set a standard for the year.
Yeah.
All
why
right.
not, right?
This is going to be. This is a difficult thing to kick a show off with. This is a difficult thing to kick any show off with when we lose a member of the Star Wars community. So I just wanted to take a second here and sort of pay our respects to Alison Shermer, who was the producer on Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, and also is the producer on Solo: A Star Wars Story. And unfortunately, Alison passed away from complications relating to lung cancer on Saturday the 20th. When we were having our meetup, we got this alert came out, and she was aged only 54, which is criminally young.
It's no age. Yeah.
Criminally young. And she had such, I think, her best work was ahead of her. I think she's had a sterling career, but the sort of projects she was involved with, everything was building on the success of the last one. She was really blazing a trail. Ron Howard tweeted out a tribute to her on the Saturday morning, saying, "A tragic loss. My heart goes out to Ali's family, whom she adored. Ali was an important colleague and friend over many years who never backed away from a challenge, but at all times was both powerfully effective and graciously humanistic. Rest in peace." It is a shell shock to lose somebody so young, I think, especially as part of this tight-knit community. So I just wanted to pay our respects to Alison Shermer and say, rest in peace, you will be missed. Okay, let's move on with...
That's bad, isn't it?
It's not good. Let's move on with some more cheerful stuff. It's such a shame because Solo's coming out. I think she's missed that thing now. She's missed the payoff of all that work, you know. And I think this is going to be something pretty special. Okay, right. This week we had our second listener meetup.
Yes, we did.
It was absolutely fantastic, and I had a blast. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who turned out for the day. We had so much fun. I also wanted to say thank you to Daniel. I updated the show notes, and
Apparently
it hasn't saved.
not.
How did that happen? How did I manage that? Is it me, or can I find a way to blame Apple? Let me just make a note of this.
You seem to find a way.
Do you know what? I'm not gonna. Not Apple. I'm not gonna edit out this truth. It's the truth. I'm gonna own it. I've just screwed up and I loaded the wrong edition of the show notes. But they're only missing a VIP that we gained today, Daniel Thorpe, who is somebody we've had in our Twitter community for quite some time, and he reached out to me today and said, "I'm going to become a patron. I'd like to know a few bits about some of the stuff going on in the community." And
run for your life.
Yeah, I said just watch out for the Australian and you'll be good to go. No, because Daniel isn't a part of the... And I should point out, I'm talking about Keegan. I'm not just being thoughtless and saying all Australians. That's probably true of all Australians, but I'm just going to pick on Keegan.
You mean Keegan? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, Daniel jumped into our community, but he's not a Facebook user, so he will be consuming some of the other aspects of the VIP membership from around Patreon and the Battlefront group on the PlayStation Network and things like that, but not a Facebook user. But thank you, Daniel, for becoming a VIP and joining our little group. Welcome, sir. It's great to have you on board. Hopefully, because he's a Brit, he can make it to one of the future meetups.
That would be cool.
That would be stunning. Okay, let's move into our YouTube section. We've got quite a lot to get through here.
Yes.
That first comment is the one I lost last week. Remember, I lost a comment somewhere, proving how amateur I am.
Did you?
Yeah. But before we get there, let's just say thank you to Kool-Aid Buzz, and EduTV45 for subscribing to the channel this week, along with everybody else.
I hope that's your real name, seriously.
Yeah. Where's Ed? UTV.
It's a shame we didn't
and he is 45.
Ed at episode 45, really. We could have used that.
That would have been good, wouldn't it? Let's go in some way back, Paul. It's
Carl's
before your
furniture,
I was going to say, it might be before your time as a regular.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been actually, wouldn't it? It was over a year ago. These are just two of the names that I can see from the new YouTube subscribers, because that doesn't always show everybody's name. So thank you to everyone that's subscribed whose details I can't see. I've noticed you've jumped on, so thank you very much. Last week we had this comment about episode 102 from Pirate of Alderaan. He says, I really hope the Solo film is good. If they do put Boba Fett in, I hope he actually does some cool stuff and isn't thrown in just for the sake of having him in it. That was the comment I should have included in last week's, and it would have been a little bit more relevant, but obviously I lost it, so my apologies. I didn't want to leave Pirate of Alderaan's comments on the floor. Rob, I think it might be good if you take Leah's comments. I've included the entire exchange because there's some humorous stuff in there, but because some of it's aimed at Paul, I think it might be better if it comes from you.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's have a look. So Leah writes, Dear Mark, Paul and Rob, I was really gutted learning that Stephen dropped out, but love the episode anyhow. Thanks 1,000 times. Paul is always right. Cheers, Leah. So you replied, thank you for the kind words, Leah. Stephen may pop back on from time to time. He was with us at the weekend for our meetup and really enjoyed himself. We appreciate the encouragement, but I have to say your sign-off leads me to believe you may be Paul in disguise. Am I right? Thanks again, Mark. Looks like it, but no. Just wanted to force will him into not leaving as well because he speaks from my mind just with much more eloquence. Would be very happy to see Stephen return. I even watched all his insect videos with ads. I left you guys a 5-star review on iTunes. Hope you'll see it. Bless. Right.
What I didn't do was include my next response, which was pretty much the last response, but I just replaced Paul's name because then I said, now I just think you're Stephen in disguise because you've watched all of his videos. But yeah, Leah, thank you so much for the support. And Paul, I think you got a fan.
Yeah.
Just the one.
We knew it would happen.
More than I've got, mate. Be grateful.
I love you.
Nobody else, nobody ever comes out and says, "Oh, I love Rob. He's great." It's always, "Oh, it's Steve. Oh, I love Mark. Oh, he works so hard. Oh, I love Paul. He's always right." Nobody.
That's the voice of fandom, ladies and gentlemen. That right there, that is the voice of the internet.
Such a whinger, Rob.
There it is.
I just have to deal with my enormous plaudits and my army of Twitter followers.
There you go.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, reviews. Don't forget that you can take advantage of our Ron Burgundy policy. That means whatever you write in a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts, we will read verbatim. So if you want to promote something like a podcast or a blog, that's where to do it. There's only one rule: keep it clean. Paul, would you like to take our first 5-star review this week?
Absolutely. Okay, this comes from the Sacred Jedi Vets. That's awesome. Okay, right.
Paul, that's actually the title of the review.
Oh, it comes from them. Sorry, it comes from Aswookie.
Yeah, it does. That's close, though.
Yeah, do you want to timecode that and I'll start again?
No.
There's some fantastic Jedi.
You fall on your lightsaber, dear sir.
We are the Sacred Jedi Vets.
They probably make really good vet. Ton of empathy.
I'm just getting lost and confused now.
All right.
Just start over, Paul. I'll cut it all in.
No, that's good. No, leave it in. It's all good. Right. I'm actually rubbing my chest, tummy as I say this. You know, like Friend style. Okay.
So method.
Read them, have you? No need. Use these veteran original trilogy Star Wars lovers. Sorry, no need. These veteran original trilogy Star Wars lovers seem to somehow encapsulate every facet of a fanboy's mind. Cynical, thoughtful, passionate, funny, and always up for more debate. Ooh, bye. You can choose who's who. Been listening since TFA. Love the honesty, even when I disagreed. The Last Jedi is ace, by the way. Round of applause there, sir. Keep up the good work. I must listen. Blip, bloppity, bloop. Aaron. Thank you, sir. Appreciate.
Wonderful.
So, also known as Aswookie, from the good old UK and Northern Ireland.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aswookie. Thank you, Aaron. That's very thoughtful. And we also have this review this week, Shall I take this one, Rob?
Yeah,
This is some BS right here.
No, it's not. This is an
Yes,
actual
it is.
review. This is in, This is
okay.
in no way reactive. So this is a 5-star review, and it's entitled "Excellent Show, but on the Naughty List." 5 stars. I have been a listener for a long time, and I love this podcast. But I'm sorry to say, 2 of the hosts are on the naughty list already. In episode 103, PO, Paul and Robert, you're in trouble.
Oh, am I in trouble?
Paul and Robert read a review which suggested I was not real. This is, of course, nonsense. And as a result, both Paul and Robert will be heading towards the naughty list this year, and it's only January. Mark is okay, though, because he's only upholding the Ron Burgundy policy, and clearly he was tricked into this by some other naughty boys. Love the show. Keep up the good work. Santa Claus from the North Pole and Greenland iTunes store, which proves that we did not do anything wrong last week.
This is some straight up BS right
It's
here.
not. It's not.
Yes, it is.
No,
Yes, it is.
And episode 103 will be deleted to cover up any and all perceived tracks.
Do you know what? Actually, yeah, listeners, go back and listen. Right, look, go back and listen. Now, I apologise to Mr. Claus because clearly we have upset him, and I don't want to do that because, understandably, I want a good haul next year. But ultimately, go back and listen because this is revisionist history from Mr. Claus.
It is not. I think if anyone can see things clearly and cogently, it's the big man himself, and he was just pointing out something that we lost in the pursuit of making art. Go on, Paul.
Is Santa even canon?
Yes, he is.
Yes, yeah, he
Okay.
is. Yeah,
So that's what the C stands for, Santa Cannon Claus.
yeah, he's in the novelisation.
All right. Well, that's there obviously to sort of to pull us up on our oversight from last week, where we questioned
To cover somebody's pull up.
It's. I think if you all go back and listen to the show, you'll agree that I was clearly tricked by some very naughty boys who have now found their way onto the naughty list. So there you go.
Oh yeah, clearly because I wrote that review, didn't I? Yeah, that's right.
And we're moving on to listener comms. So send your questions and comments via Twitter and Facebook, or you can send us an email, attach an MP3 and we'll use it as a voicemail, to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. And our first one this week is from Jaden, in inverted commas.
Such a cool name. You got a Jedi name there.
Yep, that's not his actual name. If you go back to last week, you'll hear his message.
Okay.
I can't remember this morning, Mark.
I know, you've forgotten the start of the call, haven't you, Paul?
Probably.
Rob, would you like to take Jaden's message this week?
Yeah, sure. So Jaden writes, "Hey guys, in the US, horror films have been absolutely crushing the box office in unexpected ways the past couple of years, and it got me thinking how awesome it would be to have a dark Star Wars anthology film that's a horror film. If Star Wars was to make a horror film, what would you like the story to be? I think Vader hunting down the remaining Jedi would be easy to do, but I'd like to see a bounty hunter pursuing a bounty for Vader that may involve an important figure in the rebellion. What do you guys think? Thanks."
Well, firstly, I like both of your suggestions. Awesome.
I like the Vader one.
Mm.
I'm not really following the second one.
What, the bounty hunter?
Yeah,
pursuing a character that could be if they lent on the darker aspects of that. It could be like Jason Voorhees kind of pursuit.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be all creepy as all get out. Paul?
No, they would only be thrillers because they're dealing with standard characters. Horror films have either something beyond twisted or they have something of a supernatural edge to them. So I'd like to see somebody that's on a strange side of the Force we've never seen before, which is beyond bitter and twisted.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
That would be a horror film. So yeah, you're talking the antithesis of Snoke kind of situation, something like that. Or I don't know, some demented basket case clone version of Palpacino, something like that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, because looking at it from that point of view, you could have a kind of a messed up bounty hunter on a stabbing frenzy, a la Scream kind of situation. But for me, even Scream and Co, they weren't particularly horror films either. I actually thought they were silly thrillers more than anything. A horror film to me has got an edge of maybe supernatural about it. It's got a haunting kind of situation going on and so on. Something you can't touch. You think about your Paranormal Activity kind of stuff. That'd be kind of cool. Oh, so yeah. A really twisted side of the Force no one's seen before.
I like it. Rob?
I'll be right.
I'd quite like so they did the Legends book Red Harvest,
Yes.
and
yeah.
that was about a Sith. It was sort of set, I think, in the Old Republic era, and it was about a Sith Lord who was kind of doing, I can't remember the exact plot, but it's sort of a Sith Lord doing research into a particular flower, and the flower had properties that would reanimate the dead.
Oh, okay.
I liked. I don't, the story was kind of hokey, and it was read kind of like for young adults. But what I really liked about it was that they were kind of toying with. They were toying with an element of the kind of the Star Wars universe that you don't really see very often, which is the sort of the scientific research side of things and the unexpected consequences therein.
Yeah.
What would kind of be nice is almost like a sort of Frankenstein kind of storyline, where it's about, something along those lines would be cool, I think.
Well, that's kind of like the end of Sith, isn't it? With Palpatine sort of piecing together Vader.
Yeah,
And that's very much sort of that tone being hit there, that Mary Shelley sort of tone.
Yeah.
Do you remember Heir to the Jedi, the latest, Heir to the Jedi, I think it was. It was the story.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
And
yes.
the time the hunting party land on a planet and they're being stalked by some kind of alien.
Yes.
And there's all I got the impression there was some first person sort of cam stuff in there so that you would get that feeling of pursuit like you'd expect from Jim Cameron's Alien film, or not Jim Cameron's Aliens, but Ridley Scott's Alien film, where you'd have that beast hunting you down, but you would get a lot of first person perspective like you had in Jim Cameron's Aliens movie, that kind of read like a cross between that and Predator to me, and that's always felt like horror to me. So that small section of that book, that could be the seeds for something that could be developed into a Star Wars horror film, and that could work. That would be really bold, I think.
Yeah, it sounds cool. I definitely think back to when I think of Heir to the Jedi, I think of a really good missed opportunity with exploring the creatures in the caves more.
Yeah.
That was, because obviously it was kind of a bit of a mismatch of stories, and I was really hoping that was going somewhere, and it didn't.
Yeah.
So I would, something like that, where it's kind of like the thing that's happening with superhero movies, with like Logan and stuff, where they're kind of doing different takes on the traditional formulas.
But
they need
R-rated.
to, they need to start doing, not necessarily R-rated ones, but they need to start doing that with Star Wars, because otherwise you're just not being in the least bit adventurous.
I think they will.
It's just gonna. I hope so, because
otherwise
it's just going to be very safe and tidy and.
Yeah.
As much as I enjoy the sort of swashbuckling the space opera stuff, it would be nice to start seeing some variations on the formula.
Yeah, and I think they will. I think that Rogue One was the first step, and Solo, if it's truly like the heist film, that might be the second stage of the experiment, just to see how far they can go and how well it's received.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're going to do something like that, it's just going to alienate audiences still further, then you're better off just making a different type of movie altogether. And we've no idea what Ryan's trilogy is going to be. That might lean into this stuff quite heavily, but I doubt it. But it
maybe.
could be that, couldn't it?
I wouldn't have thought it would. I think it's going to be more traditional kind of Star Wars fare.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. A more traditional trilogy set in Star Wars universe. That's good stuff, though, Jaden. Thank you so much. And I did get your second email, and it is it's in a holding pattern for next week's show, sir. So we're not overlooking your contributions, but we do have a few more to get to. So thank you very much. We got the follow up. You remember last week we had this message from Derek that had a tone of finality, and I said I'd requested a follow up, which we don't normally do, just to see whether or not he was still in. Do you remember that, Paul?
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, it was because we were getting a little bit concerned that he was on his way out of fandom. So he sent his follow up this week, and he says, "Hello, I'm still in, and thanks to the conversations I've heard on Talk Star Wars and elsewhere, I feel good about my fandom. After rereading the email I sent, I picked up on the tone of finality, and that was not the intent. You guys helped me reach a place of peace, satisfaction, and gratitude. When I was 8 years old, Star Wars captured my heart and imagination. After watching Empire, every 11-year-old in my neighbourhood went into Jedi training. Today my heroes are passing on, both literally and fictionally. The band can never get back together, and that is sad. However, I'm becoming more okay with it. You might say I'm passing through the 5 stages of grief. Even though I really love these new heroes, and I think they're doing a fantastic job, there is no way for them to have the same emotional impact on me as an adult. And that's okay. Hopefully they are deeply connecting emotionally with a new generation. I've had my fun, I've had my adventure, I'm satisfied, and I'm sincerely rooting for the new heroes. The journey isn't over, it's just changing. I'm more than happy to make room for the next generation and jump on board. This is why I ultimately rank The Last Jedi third on my list. It's a necessary transition piece. I can't wait for the day to listen to Talk Star Wars with my grandchildren. May the saga continue forever. P.S. I hope Steve returns to the discussion soon. I very much liked his wit, sarcasm and challenging perspective. P.S. For the record, I almost shared my thoughts during the movie. In the end, I held my tongue so as not to be rude. May the force be with you, Derek in Denver, Colorado. Derek, thank you so much for the follow-up. I'm glad you're still in. I'm glad you're still with us, and that and you had so many positive, so much of a positive view on what they're doing with new Star Wars. I find that really reassuring. So great stuff. Not so much a question this week, but I'm glad he wrote in.
No, there's a wild ride ahead. I mean, I completely agree with him. These, the current new crop of heroes we've got. For me, no, they're not. Sorry, but they're not a scratch on what obviously Luke, Leia, and Han, and even Vader did to us back then and Ben and so on. They're not touching the surface. But I'm appreciating them from what they're, what's come around the corner and so on. But I also think Star Wars is in a slightly different light to that. That's the thing. We're also now in a cinematic, where cinema's a little different. It's a lot more high resolution, a lot more impacting with technologies and so on and so forth. And I think we kind of accept that the people within the movies go along with that flow as well to a degree. The way the movies are produced is slightly different as well. Mm-hmm. So from a point of view of imagination and romance and stuff, I'm still in the land, deep down of George and Harrison and Luke and Carrie Fisher and so on, and I like dirty deserts, I like robots that break and so on and so forth. But that going forward from a story mechanism, I think there's still a wild ride ahead. I'm still very, very keen to see what Solo offers us, what the likes of Ron Howard can offer us, what JJ might bring to the board next, etc., etc. So transitions are required.
Indeed, well said, sir.
Because the gates have to shut. Because we don't last forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, we can't. Unfortunately, we can't keep telling the same stories with the same characters over and over. This thing is going to grow, and it's going to live beyond those characters, beyond George, beyond the confines in that story, and hopefully find new and interesting stories to tell.
No doubt.
Rob, your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm not as far along that particular train as you guys are. I appreciate the position, but I mean, ultimately, my kind of where I sit falls from the point of view of I think it's okay if you stop. You know what I mean? It's not like I don't see it as a Star Wars doesn't owe you don't owe Star Wars anything, if that makes sense. Like you don't you shouldn't feel, oh well, I have to stick with this because it's Star Wars and I love Star Wars. Like if it's not for you, a particular film or a particular trilogy or any of that stuff, that's okay. And the stuff you like doesn't catch fire. Yeah. I keep coming back to that point because it's one of the best things we've ever said on the Crazy Train podcast. But ultimately the media the films you love, or the books you love, or the comics you love, the games you love, whether they're canon or they're not canon and all that stuff, they don't go anywhere. You can still get, as long as you can still get them, you can have as much kind of dealing with Star Wars in whatever context and capacity you want, and I think that's good, and I think that's fine. And it concerns me a little bit when I see people kind of desperate to reconcile whatever feelings they're having about. They feel. I see people who almost feel like it looks like they feel like they have to get on board with Last Jedi, or they're in some way deficient as a fan, and it's not, it's not the case. Like, it just, you can just be, you can just have, a film doesn't have to grab you just because of the two words at the beginning, the two sort of words of the franchise. Like, you don't have to like every single, I don't like every single Indiana Jones film, but I like the trilogy. And I like the sort of the universe, the world they build. I don't like every single Alien film, but at the same time, I love the world. Again, I love the world they've crafted across these multiple directors and these multiple storylines. Star Wars occupies that exact same position for me. I don't love every Star Wars movie. I like most of them, if not all of them. But I don't feel compelled in any way to think of things any other way than what I feel. What I feel about it. That's okay. There's no harm in that, and that's the main kind of takeaway I have for anybody listening. Because I know I've had communiques from people who are sort of conflicted about this stuff.
Yeah,
and there's no need to be. They're just they're fun movies, but they are just movies.
Yeah, there's no hard and fast rules with this stuff.
No, and what's more, there's no right or wrong way to appreciate these things. I'm getting a little bit knocked off with the people who seem to think that any other way than theirs is wrong. And when I get the opportunity, I'm sure I'll take those people to task. But you have to pick your battles.
Yeah,
because it drives me up the wall.
Yeah, no, you are not wrong. You are not
some
wrong.
Some of the people, like, quite frankly, some of the people on, in the Star Wars kind of Twitter verse, some of them should really take a step back and look at things and just. I find myself just thinking, if you're watching that exchange between two other people who you don't know, I feel like you wouldn't be so kind of utterly convinced of your own moral superiority. You know what I mean? And it's people who, I think I said before, should know better. And especially if you're a podcaster, you have the best medium on the planet to have long form discourse and proper civilized discussion. If you're not using it and you're just kind of being a tool to people on Facebook comments, and I don't know what to tell you. Like, it just,
you're burning the platform you built.
And it's almost like the way I'd kind of describe it is, I was thinking about this today. It's the same people who accuse some of gatekeeping. They want to gatekeep too. They just want to shut it from the other side.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't make it right, just because you think you're on the right side of the argument. Everybody thinks that about their own position. That's how opinions work. But ultimately, these things it's art, man. It's subjective.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I actually think Derek's point of view on this is quite healthy. And
yeah, that's fine.
Really probably the most considered perspective I've seen yet of someone that's come into it. And I've experienced myself some challenging aspects of The Last Jedi. The first time I watched it, I didn't know what to think, what I was supposed to think. Have I fouled it in some way? I had all those feelings. But for Derek to come out of it with such a balanced point of view, that he wants the next generation to inherit it and enjoy it, and he'll enjoy it in his own way, and hope that they get the same thing out of it that we got from Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah,
and I do, and I hope that's what I'd like to see for the future of Star Wars. But some of this fandom stuff is going to be peeing in the pool a little bit, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah,
with the gatekeeping.
Yeah, I say it's a little bit disheartening to see it, especially especially from people who you think, oh, I thought they were better than this.
Yeah,
it's disappointing to see that sort of behaviour from people you admire in any other respect.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the world in which we live. It is, a team sports world. Yeah. You're either a whining crybaby or you're a Disney shill. There's no middle ground. Yeah, and it's not it's not the way. And anybody who thinks it is the way is
sadly mistaken.
They're not any less deluded just because they're on one side of the aisle.
Indeed. All right. Derek, thank you so much.
They are.
Thank you so much for thank you so much for your email, Derek. I'm glad to see that everything is okay with your fandom. That's positive. Double thumbs up to you, sir. Paul, would you like to take the email from Mark?
Absolutely. Do we know what the S is?
No.
Okay, just from Mark S.
Indeed.
Greetings, gents. Okay, I have a new Snoke theory that I thought I'd share with you. I believe Snoke is from the same race as the Prime Jedi, seen on the floor of the first Jedi Temple. I believe they're a race enslaved by the Wills, who I believe are Force gods. I think both the Prime Jedi and Snoke escaped from the Wills, and they both had strong ability with the Force, but that the Wills would make them look like younglings in comparison. What do you guys think? Could Snoke be a descendant of the Prime Jedi? I'm going to have to listen to your comments on this one, I'm afraid, gentlemen. I'm not 100% clued up on Prime Jedi. Is this something that is outside the trilogies? Not the trilogy, but the story as we know it from a movie point of view.
Sort of, yeah.
It's very new.
Yeah, so basically in the...
It's new, okay.
Is it the visual dictionary, Mark, that alluded to this in the first instance?
I have it right next to me. I will open it and we will do some research. You keep talking, Rob.
All right, so for Paul and any listeners' benefit who's not up to speed, the Prime Jedi is depicted, I think, in the the pool of water on the cliff on Ahch-To. There's the one that Luke sits by while he's sort of reminiscing about where the Jedi went wrong. There's a face in that pool, and then it's half shadow, half light, and apparently that's meant to depict the Prime Jedi. And apparently people are people are pointing out the kind of resemblance in sort of face shape to a kind of Snoke, and obviously there's no explanation of his backstory. People are desperate for one because that's what they want, and
we will
that's fine.
Fandom will fill a vacuum if there's one there.
Quite so. If there's holes, then you want to fill it with cool stuff because that's how speculation can be fun.
Yep, I can give you some insight if you like. I've just found the page. So there is a picture of the mosaic in the visual dictionary.
Looking at it now.
Oh, you're looking at it. Fantastic, because I was just about to take a photograph and add it into the chat. So it says, set into the floor in the Ahch-To temple is an ancient mosaic. According to the caretakers, it's an image of the Prime Jedi, the first of the Order, in a state of meditation and balance. So it very much has an air of the yin-yang to it, partial black and partial white. There's some equilibrium to it, and it does superficially resemble Snoke. So I think that there could be something to this if JJ and Chris Terrio decide to take it in that direction. I think there certainly could be something to it. That's
the key takeaway. That's the wording. The way you phrase that is the way I really like it. If JJ decides to take it that way, then that's something they could explore. Because ultimately, I don't necessarily think they have any idea of what Snoke is. Otherwise,
no,
certainly nothing's been made apparent at the very least.
No, and this is something that this is one of my grievances with the new trilogy, is that there isn't a singular vision. There isn't a singular storyteller that's overseeing everything. So some of this stuff now is pretty much left to the next guy. There's a baton passed, and Ryan told his story, and he laid some groundwork, and then it was passed to JJ and Chris Terrio to sort of work out the details for the next leg of this journey.
Yeah.
I like the way you're thinking, though, Mark. I like the way you're thinking. I love.
Cool.
I got to be honest. I'm keen. The observation's very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
I've seen that theory do the rounds on like Reddit and stuff because it's like you said, people with holes in the speculation, people want to fill them with cool stuff, and more power to them. Speculation is what keeps this stuff vibrant and interesting.
It's our bread and butter on this podcast, and that's what we enjoy the most.
Very much so, especially as we got loads of mileage out of it and didn't have to be right.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm not going to judge anyone for getting this stuff wrong. It's
no, not at all.
It's all the fun of the fair, as far as I'm concerned. There is one line in the, sometimes I go through our listener email and I will include everything. I'll never edit a listener's email, but sometimes I will bold out a line. I don't know if you've noticed me do that in the show notes. It's because something strikes me as being incredibly cool. And in Mark's email, I didn't bold it, but this line is incredibly cool. I believe they are a race enslaved by the wills, who I believe are force gods. Does it get any cooler than that? That is some metal right there, isn't it?
That would explain a lot in terms of why he's so, embittered against the Jedi.
Wouldn't it?
Especially if the Jedi are kind of revering the wills as holy figures in the early days.
Yeah, and the Journal of the Wills would suggest that they are worshipped in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like it very much. Very much indeed.
Pretty cool.
All right, let's move on. Thank you, Mark, for that. All right, from Scruffy Hahn. Greetings, Mark. He'll ignore the naughty boys. He's ignoring the people on the naughty list. Greetings, Mark. Thanks for reading my email on episode 103 PO. Glad that's catching on. I have 3 ideas to share with you now. First, I agree with what you said about Ryan's interpretation of who Rey's parents are, but I do think JJ had a way different idea on the subject. I think JJ can bring his original vision back by saying that yes, the people who sold Rey to Unkar Plutt were the Junkers, but they weren't her biological parents, and her actual parents were very important to her Force abilities. Do we want to take these one at a time, or should we go through?
Yeah, we can do. Yeah,
one at a time. So, what do you think about the chances of JJ retconning this element of Rey's parentage?
I can only say I hope not.
Yeah, I think they're high, but I hope he doesn't do it. I think he will. I think he will do it.
Right.
And I think it will. And actually, I think it might end up that the film suffers for it.
Okay.
Because it will come off like a Leia's your sister kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with both of you to a degree. I hope he doesn't, because I think it would really rob The Last Jedi of something, and I think it's unlikely, because from what I can tell, listening to Ryan in conversation over the past couple of weeks since he's been allowed to talk spoilers, JJ's on the same page with regard to Rey, and it was a very deliberate choice on Ryan's part to remove the crutch of significant origin from Rey, so she had to find a way to stand on her own.
Yeah,
which is incredibly important. And Rob, it's a point you've made repeatedly over the past couple of years, that Rey, if all Rey is to the manner born, it robs her of something. And now she's being forced by the storytellers to become a strong character unto herself, and not lean on being from this strong bloodline, this significant bloodline. And Ryan is reveling in that element, and JJ appears to be on board with him. So I think it's highly unlikely that they'll retcon this, and I think it will simply be that Rey is from nowhere, as Luke calls her in the story.
Yeah. The thing, I would be really disappointed if they don't go down that route, because that was, the way they handled Rey in Last Jedi was one of my favourite things about the film, because they subtly did away with all the kind of complaints about her being too, they gave her depth. It wasn't just like I said, I've referred to it before as an eye-rolling snark machine. Yeah. It wasn't just I've heard this before. You can't teach me anything. I know everything there is to know kind of attitude that she kind of projected a little bit in, being given a blaster and I think I can handle myself. Yeah. And sort of Han shrugs it off, but it's pretty arrogant, really, to assume that because you're all right with a staff, you'll be able to able to shoot a blaster with any degree of accuracy. But the point is, in Last Jedi, you didn't necessarily get that sense. She still had not had a lot of training, but she's a little bit more credible to me as a protagonist, because there's a little bit more to her character, and you've seen some of her flaws. She can be kind of goaded quite easily into believing in people, and she's not cynical enough, and she's not world wise enough.
There's nothing wrong with naivety, is there?
Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I think if you want to paint a compelling character, you need them to be a bit more world wise over time, and I think that's what they were doing in Last Jedi.
Vulnerabilities are fun as well, though.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful quality. You look at how wide-eyed Luke was in A New Hope. All of that romantic stuff he does of staring off into the distance, it discounts some of the uglier stuff that's there.
But then I don't necessarily think there was any of that vulnerability in Force Awakens, for the reasons I've kind of mentioned just now. I think, she was painted as this Nothing can phase her. Nothing can.
Yeah, but she had to face that in this movie.
Exactly, and that's why I liked it.
And
that's one of the things I liked about it.
One moment really stands out to me, and it's fast becoming. The more I recount it, it's fast becoming my favourite moment of the film, and it's a number of viewings that strips this thing down, so I can see all the parts moving, and I just think it's wonderful, and I think it's beautifully written and beautifully played by Adam Driver, and it's when he's confronting her after the Praetorian Rumble, sponsored by T-Public, and he reaches out to her and says, like, join me. You want to know the truth about your parents? And she like rolls a tear because she kind of already knows. Yeah. And he challenges her. And this is the beautiful thing about, I think, what Ryan's designed around the Snoke dynamic with Kylo and what Kylo's grooming Rey for, is he says, your parents are nobody. Like, your parents were no one. You're nobody, but you're not nothing to me.
But you're something to me, yeah.
And then he says, join me, please. And it's wonderful because what he's doing is he's trying to craft the relationship he's just had with Snoke. Snoke's done that. Snoke's groomed him and said, jettison everything and I'll give you riches. I'll give you power. Yeah. And he's doing the same thing. But he's leaning on the exposed nerve with Rey. He's leaning on her, what he perceives to be her weakness. You don't know where you come from. You don't know where your parents are. But I'm telling you now, they're no one. And what is the effect of that? Is it going to destroy you and you're going to need to lean on me in order to define who you are as a person, build your character around me, and I will shore you up? Or does it put Rey in a position where she has to say, you know what, he's right. By that measure, maybe I am no one, but I am a person of my own making. I think that's what she saw in the cave. There's only one person she can rely on, and that's herself. She has to provide for herself, protect herself, and her ideals. And if that means fighting and dying for those ideals, then that's what she has to do. But she'll define herself on her own terms. That's incredible. That is incredible what they've done with Rey. To take her from a standing start in The Force Awakens and put her in that situation where so much of that is evident in that moment, that simple exchange is gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. And, you know, as I say, this is what I like about it, is they've built a bit more complexity into that dynamic and stuff. The only thing I would have liked to see, I talked about before, is I would have liked a period of time where we weren't sure, you know, they were sort of nervously working together and we weren't sure which way it was going to go.
Yeah.
I would have liked a bit of mystery for a little while, but, you know, what they did was fine. It's just, I would have liked it. I feel like I would have liked a little more, who's gonna kind of blink first in terms of realizing this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Is it going to be that, you know, Rey's going to go more towards Kylo's way of thinking, or is it going to be that he comes, you know, are they going to sort of, you know, they could have teased him coming back towards the light a bit, or her going towards the dark a bit, and they didn't. They breezed through what I think they could have lingered on for a little while and got a little bit more mileage out of.
The problem is the movies, they move at such a clip, don't they? Because if some of these elements of the story were in The Force Awakens, you could have had some time transpire between the two films, and then you could have implied some of that as having taken place, even if it was in an introspective manner for one of those characters. But because one film picks up where the other one left off, we don't have that luxury. It's just moving too quickly.
Yeah.
No, I really like that. I think it would be a shame now for all that work that's just been done. I think it would be a shame to undo it and say, do you know what, Rey? We were wrong. Your parents were important. They're royalty. You're a god. Here's your gold thing, and congratulations. That would be a horrible, horrible mistake, I think.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's far more interesting to me to have somebody whose past is uncertain, and, you know. Yeah. The only exception I'll make is how much fun I had watching Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he was somebody who we didn't... You know, this is an argument that gets trotted out quite commonly in terms of people saying, well, we didn't get anything about Snoke's backstory, and people pointed out that we didn't have initially anything about Palpatine's either.
No.
And that's a perfectly valid point. And, you know, but at the same time, I think... I don't know, I feel like people were a little bit more kind of forgiving on that because... we didn't have anything to reference previously, whereas now we do.
Yes, yeah, and it does recontextualize everything, doesn't it? When you have the benefit of those prequels redefining a character in the OT, it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that that wasn't always there. And I'm sure to some audience members going forward, it will always be there because they're very young and they've come along long after the prequels were released. But there you go.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready to move on to the second part of Scruffy Hahn's question?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, he says, second, I do think the Jedi were idolised during the Clone Wars by children across the galaxy. However, Palpatine vilified the Jedi Order, calling them traitors, and this made people view them in a very different light. Suddenly the Jedi were seen to be villains who were hated by the galaxy in general. So do you think there's any truth to that?
Not sure.
Palpatine would have altered the galaxy's attitude toward the Jedi through propaganda?
I think it would have made people warier of the Jedi. I don't know about vilified fully, but I think it would have certainly made people a little bit more, well, can we, when Luke's sort of showing his face in the galaxy after the events of Jedi, well, is that a good thing we've got a Jedi now? Because, we've been sort of told these pretty horrible stories about the Jedi in the past. But then, a few people seem to be pretty glad to see the back of Palpatine, so they'll probably be all right with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's probably a mix, isn't it? I'm sure that there are people who... I think it will help to remember that there are a very few number of Jedi.
True.
Certainly there were extremely low numbers of Sith, but there were only about 10,000 Jedi. So it wasn't like everyone crossed paths with the Jedi all the time. They weren't this omnipresent force, this peacekeeping force like the police monks. That's not what they were. They were almost, I would imagine, rumour and almost legend anyway. But there are clues, I think, in TFA when Finn mentions Luke to Rey and she says, he's legend. Like, he's almost disappeared.
I thought it was a myth.
Yeah, I thought it was a myth. Disappeared almost into the ether. Paul?
I don't know how anyone would have seen them in a different light. And like you say, they were legend. It was easy to catch as smoke, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did run across one, they would have been the last people to cause you harm. So any propaganda that was released, why would it have been absorbed?
I suppose they would have had, the Clone Wars would have showed that the Jedi were pretty capable soldiers. So maybe they thought it was kind of a, they phrase it like a coup in episode 3.
Yes, a coup d'etat.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe they've sort of painted it as, they've become this kind of militia and they've gone ahead and sort of overthrown.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The council were stuffy, and if you don't do it our way, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they were always on the side of technically peace and understanding and almost pacifism and everything else.
But that's us in the God seat, Paul, isn't it? That's us seeing it in the God seat. From the average Joe in the Star Wars galaxy, they would have heard rumours about these Jedi. They would have heard of their benevolent nature and their use of this mystical power. And then you've got a choice, because they are, like you said, there's so much smoke. It's, what do you believe? Do you believe when people say, the Jedi are great and they go around, they do all this cool stuff, like make sandwiches for homeless people and, they don't kill Rhodians when perhaps they should? But then you get this huge thing where a Jedi commissions a clone army. Remember, that was Sifo Dyas. That wasn't the Sith. That wasn't Dooku. Sifo Dyas commissioned this army for the Republic, and then the Jedi altered that army's path and used it to attempt to overthrow the government, because that's the way Palpatine spun it. So suddenly you've got these altruistic, these mystical monks that, we've heard they do great things. We've heard they do wonderful, generous things. But ultimately what we've seen and what's been reported to us from the Galactic Centre is they commissioned a clone army, they used it against the government, and ultimately the wisdom of our leader defeat them. And now they've been eradicated by a guy who arguably looks like a villainous figure. They should have seen that. They should have seen that coming. But, they're being told by the leader at the Galactic Centre that the Jedi turned on the public. They turned on the public's interests, and that's what they've bought into. So, I think I'm with Scruffy Hahn on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that.
Okay, we want to move on to the third part?
Yes.
There isn't a third part.
There is
There is a third part.
Yeah, there is.
Sorry, it does actually say third. Yeah.
Yes, and in
He puts
bold.
little clues in. Yeah.
And in bold. All right, third, Boba Fett appearing in a solo film. I would like to see Han get involved with something that, unbeknownst to him, was of interest to Jabba, and then he encounters Fett. Perhaps he actually ends up on Fett's side and gains the bounty hunter's respect. Fett can actually be one to introduce Han to Jabba and recommend him for jobs. So what do you think? Might Boba Fett and Han become contemporaries in solo?
Yeah, I've still never got. I think I choose to, unfortunately, now and purposely not get the entire fandom behind Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
For me, he was a guy that nodded.
But very cool.
And very, very coolly.
Such a cool
sort
nod,
of thing.
though. Yeah.
It was. Obviously, he's no good to be dead, all that kind of thing. But I never really got the whole Fett thing. But yeah, obviously, the whole Jabba, the connection, and he was that was his bounty, and so on and so forth. But I think the way the public grasped onto Boba Fett. I mean, he became one of the biggest Star Wars figures, and the biggest, the model. It was like 18 inches tall, and so everyone had that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, you get a pretty good feeling that purely for fandom, he's going to get a reasonable cameo in this film. I actually like the idea of there being almost kind of a smuggler's agreement, and they almost are tolerable as each other as clients, for want of a better word, and then obviously for Han to completely screw him over.
That's a good idea as well.
Everything from that point is always been Fett's vengeance against Han. It's like, number one, I get my money off Jabba. Number two, I get to put that SOB in a box kind of thing, which I think it would actually put a kind of a more cooler side on Fett on it, because
it would enhance that character.
Yeah, like enhance.
Wow.
But yeah, I've never actually grasped the whole thing, the fandom on him. But they got the ability to twist it on this. Obviously, they're finished, they're ready to roll and stuff. I don't know if it's going to be the case, but it'd be very interesting if they put a different angle on it.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I think that we say this on TSW Comics all the time. If you're just doing something in a story that picks a character up and then sets it back down at exactly the same place, you haven't advanced that character's story in any way, shape or form, then what's the point of telling the story? So if they're going to have Fett in this, I would hope they would do something that will enhance him as a character and recontextualise what we know already from the OT. So if it does put Fett and Solo at odds, any exchange they have in this movie, if it puts them at odds, then that's fuel to the fire, fuel in the pursuit of Han by Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back. That would be great. And I love the idea that these two could be contemporaries in the Solo movie, even if it's just for one gig, just have them as contemporaries. And you know what? I haven't done the math, but we might have to go and look. I think Daniel Logan might be about the right age to portray Fett now alongside Alden Ehrenreich and buy them as being around about the same age. And then you'll have continuity of storytelling from the prequels all the way through to this standalone film. I think that would be pretty good, because you see.
Let's just hope they had the foresight you've just had.
Well, I mean, that's it's in a way I'm kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, because the film's done, it's in the can. So whether they've done it or not, but that would be fantastic, because I think Daniel Logan is the right age, and he would certainly look like Tim Morrison, like a young Tim Morrison at this point. So I would buy it. I think that would be pretty good, pretty cool stuff. Nicely done. Nice, Scruffy Han. Thank you so much.
Hang on, do you not want to hear what I think?
No, I don't. We're going to move on.
Suit yourself.
Rob, what do you think?
No, it's all right. You don't care.
No, I do. I do really
That's
care.
fine. I haven't got any fans. It's fine. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to listen.
We're going to get letters.
No, I like where Paul was coming from with the idea that he might be sort of desperate to screw him over in return for some indiscretion. But actually, I'm going to take a different tack on it, because I actually quite like the idea that they do have a kind of grudging respect for each other, but it's, he's kind of drawn to the green rather than blood. So it's like, when sort of Jabba puts out the death mark, I think it's called, on him.
Yeah.
Boba Fett's almost like, that's a shame. I kind of liked him, but business is business.
Yeah, that's cool. That is very in keeping with the Boba Fett that's kind of built up in fandom's collective consciousness as well, isn't it? That the guy works for the highest bidder, and that money cuts a lot of ties.
Yeah, well, he's not. I've not seen any evidence in the movies or that he's kind of got any kind of massive grudge against Han specifically. He's just he knows him very well, clearly, because he knows the kind of tricks he's going to pull.
Yeah,
is why he can track him to Bespin. So it almost feels to me like they should be actually almost close in kind of as contemporaries. They shouldn't be. Oh, I've always hated that bloke.
Yeah,
it should almost be the opposite. It should be.
Work well.
It's he's my friend, and that's why I know what he's going to do next.
And considering Lando's presence in the Solo movie as well, it would do a lot to alter the way you view that scene of them standing in the corridor outside the room where Vader's having Han tortured.
Yeah,
because there's a glance exchange between Boba and Lando that could be read to be some familiarity. Do you not remember the days when we were like a brotherhood or something? Yeah,
and almost, without, you can't see his face, obviously, which is one of the nice things about the costume, but you could almost, if you kind of approach it from the point of view I was just describing, you could almost see him underneath that mask just giving him a look of, well, I don't like it either. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You know how I operate.
With. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he's sticking his tongue out.
You can't see me.
It's like, this T thing on your helmet? I can see through that.
Yeah.
How rude. All right. Thank you very much, Scruffy Han. Great questions. Great 3-part question. That's a lot to think about. Great ideas in there too. All right. We're going to be going to Casey's corner. So, Paul, would you like to take Katie's question? Rob's not doing all the... Have you got the new show notes? Because Casey's corner's in the refresh show notes I just put out.
I've got them now, yeah.
Oh, hang on.
I just dropped him in the chat, Rob, because Casey's
while Rob's
was missing
getting his life together then. Okay, from Katie. Okay, hey guys. Hope you guys are well. We are indeed, thank you very much. Right, before I get into the question here, I just want to say how great it was meeting you guys and everyone else. It was such a blast, and I can't wait for the next one. It would have been better if a couple of other people would have been there, but you'll take what you can get, Katie.
My notes haven't been updated. I don't seem to have that bit.
No. That's been. I think Paul's got his own set of show notes.
Oh, that's a metaphor.
Am I not reading the right ones?
No, you are, mate. You are. You carry on.
You are. Yeah.
What's he talking about?
I'm just being facetious.
Just the way you're editing it, putting extra things in there.
Yeah.
You're a facetious shoehorn. I'll say that for you. Right. The question this week. I like Katie. She always asked, what do your favourite moments and stuff, and I've just caught up. So what is your favourite Anakin Skywalker moment? Mine, surprisingly, comes from Attack of the Clones, and it's the slaughter of the Tusken Raider camp. Yes, I know this may be cheating because he was well on the path to becoming Darth Vader, but I just loved Hayden's performance. You could feel the anger coming out of him, from the evil stares to the swift and heavy strokes of the lightsaber. So good. So,
Katie,
what is your favourite Anakin Skywalker moment?
That is really dark, Katie. You should be ashamed.
I love it.
Favourite Anakin? Oh, go on then, Paul.
Well, give me a minute. You need to.
Go on then, Rob.
Yeah, I've had a chance to think about this because we got sent this question earlier on in the day. I would say probably the pre-fight stuff on Mustafar with him and Obi-Wan. I really enjoyed watching that kind of back and forth where they're sort of debating philosophically almost.
Yeah.
But also I really like the lightsaber fight, and there's a particular thing I like about it. It's there's a moment where they're standing on a table and they both got their lightsabers and they're just swinging them around each other's heads, and it looks like they're just doing nothing. But then I thought about it from the point of view of these are two people who know each other inside out. I would almost expect them to just kind of be swinging just in frustration of I can't hit him, and he's every move there, every microsecond of every move is being telegraphed.
Yep.
That's kind of how I like,
Checkmate,
how I like to look at that. Yeah, exactly. That particular bit is almost like, I'm not going to be able to beat this one with anything basic because he knows it all because I taught him everything I know.
Yeah, that really is a cool moment.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I love that. For me, because I had a conversation with Lisa when we was having dinner this evening about Anakin and that moment, Katie's moment with the slaughter of the Tusken Raiders, and I said that's one of my favourite moments. I know I just made fun saying that Katie was dark, but clearly I'm dark too. I love that moment, and I think it does a lot to sort of build the character of Anakin and set out the weaknesses that will lead to his fall. But there is a moment that I think comes a close second to that, and it's when Anakin, or Darth Vader, but it is Anakin, has been dispatched to Mustafar to take out all the Trade Federation and all the Viceroy and the banking clan, everybody that's there, everyone that was witness to Palpatine's plan. Vader is sent to dispatch them. And there's a moment after he's committed mass murder in that facility on Mustafar, where he goes up on to a platform and awaits Padme, and it's Anakin again. Like, the yellow eyes have gone, and he's standing there, and like one tear rolls down his cheek when you just know this guy is waiting for the woman he's just sold his soul for. And that's wonderful. I love that. It makes Vader a truly tragic, if not sympathetic, a tragic figure. That this guy has just sold everything for this woman, and now he's waiting for her to come to him. And that is wonderful. I love that so much. Paul?
Mine's not as romantic, actually. It doesn't actually involve any dialogue. It doesn't involve much at all. It's simply Anakin stroke Vader, hood up, walking towards us into the temple with all the guys behind him. The music's pushing, and it's just his face is, total sum. He's got black underneath the eyes. He's got virtually yellow eyes, like you say, and he's almost like Walking Dead scene, but it's much, much heavier. It's not, obviously Imperial March kind of thing, but it's got this stomping, dark theme attached to it, and it's just him walking towards us, and you just know, hell is coming, kind of thing. So yeah.
I just want to throw in a little nod to another moment, my experience watching The Revenge of the Sith, because it was one of those films I got to preview. Fortunately, it was very early on in my time working as a projectionist, and so when we got that movie and I got to watch it on my own, and I was watching it through, and there's a moment where Anakin's been told to remain at the temple whilst Mace and a few other Jedi, useless Jedi, go to take on
silly Jedi.
Yeah, silly Jedi. They go to take on Sidious, and they don't yet really know what they're getting into. No. And Anakin stays put, and you can see him get more and more agitated, and then he runs to his ship. And at that point, I was watching the movie on my own, and I saw him run and jump into the cockpit, and I said to myself, well, actually, I think I said out loud, no, don't do it, just stay where you are. Yeah. Knowing, obviously, where this was going to go for him and what he was going to have to become by the end of this movie.
And he couldn't hear you as well.
But he couldn't. He was very ignorant. But I was so desperate for that character not to go any further down that path. I knew where it was going, and I was still wrapped up in that moment. I still, for all that's been said about Hayden Christensen, he still brought enough empathy to that character for me to want him to stay put. It wasn't like, oh, go and be cool and become this dark thing that we love so much. I really did want him to sort of try and stay his hand just for a little while. But, of course, that wasn't going to be a thing.
Not to be.
There's a lot of cool Anakin moments, and I think Hayden Christensen, for what it's worth, I think he's fantastic. I would love to see his return to the saga. Right, that's it. Thank you, Katie.
I've got one more, actually, to
append. In there.
It's no words. Again, it's another one where no words pass between, but it's when he's staring out into the into the sort of city of Coruscant, and Padme's staring out from her window, and they're not, they're looking at each other, not directly, but obviously there's that beautiful music behind them, that
so
really
haunting,
that haunting minimalist choral stuff that just swells, and it's just one of my favorite bits of any movie. It's just great.
It is gorgeous. Yeah, I love she breaks down, doesn't she? At that point. Yeah. And there's smoke coming up from the... Is it from the temple?
It's because she broke down.
Is it? Yeah. Should have changed her oil.
That's all it. Right. All her bearings were loose. She was due a service.
That's it. Katie, thank you so much for your question this week. Looking forward to next week's. Katie won the VIP draw this month, actually.
Nice.
And won a gorgeous collector's set of stamps with a
Oh,
coin.
yeah.
That was donated to the draw by Matt Parks.
Yes, very nice.
It's gorgeous. And yeah, so she was she was more than happy to have won that this evening.
Yeah, I know.
So that's good. If you want to be in with a chance, then listen out. This advert is going to be for our Patreon campaign. So we're going to head off there, and then when we come back, we'll be jumping straight into Casey's Corner. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. If you'd like to support what we do here at Talk Star Wars, then head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a patron. Your support will help us as we expand our programming to include further shows, and in return, you'll get access to an exclusive VIP Facebook group, a monthly prize draw, weekly Facebook live sessions, priority release podcasts, an exclusive daily podcast, and a whole lot more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars today and become a TSW patron.
And we're back. So you've just heard all about how you can become a TSW patron by going to the TSW Patreon and becoming somebody who patronises us. I've never understood why that's become the verb.
I know.
Because it's already a thing. I don't know.
It is, and it's negative.
Indeed. Anyway, what's not negative is the corner that follows the ad for the Patreon program. Normally, it's between Connor and Casey, and this time it is Casey who has written to the corner. And Casey writes as follows. Sorry for this being almost literally last minute. I had some things come up last night when I was intending to write it. Hopefully I'm not too late for the show. So, he's not, just about. Skinny your teeth, mate. Skinny your teeth. Hey guys, sorry to ask you to beat a dead horse, but I have another question about Luke this week. I mentioned in a recent question that I didn't like how he was portrayed in The Last Jedi because it felt like it changed some of his core values that made him a hero. I want to like Luke in this movie. I've always loved the character and I don't want to hate the way he turned out at the end of his life. Either way, I still love the character, and I'm not one of those people that say they ruined my childhood because of a movie that came out when I'm an adult, but it would be nice to feel like a character I love got a good send-off. I've heard a lot of people try to explain why it made sense that he was the way he was, and I've never been able to agree with the points they made. But during your last discussion of Luke for the first time, I started to feel like maybe it does make sense how he turned out. Your discussion was the first one that started to make me really second-guess this opinion. It made me think of a follow-up question. I'm hoping that hearing you guys talk about it some more might change my mind. So here's the question. Do you guys think Luke was happy with the Jedi Order and the destruction of his academy was the sole reason he decided the Jedi Order should end? Or do you think he was already having doubts and this was the last straw? Personally, I'd like to think that through his training and studies, he was already questioning the Jedi Order. Even though I understand this would be a life-shattering event, I feel like it should take more than just the one thing for Luke to give up on his lifelong beliefs that he seemed so dedicated to in the original trilogy. Thanks, Casey. So, thanks, Casey, for that one. There was no sign-off. I just got a bit thrown.
It did kind of just hit a dead end, didn't it? I must have just copied and pasted without his sign-off. My apologies.
That's all right. So, the question is, was Luke already losing faith in the Jedi, or was it a one-time thing that shook him to the core?
Mm-hmm. I have a pretty solid position on this.
You have to go with yours then, because I don't really know.
Okay, well, we'll see what
be honest.
See what you think of this, because I think it's kind of in the text a little bit. I think I'm bringing some stuff to it for sure, but I do think there's something in the text. I think Luke had already lost some faith in the Jedi Order. At least the Jedi Order, that if we listen to what he says about the Jedi allowed Darth Sidious to rise up and bring about their fall, and it was a Jedi that trained Darth Vader and let Darth Vader come to the fore. It seems pretty clear to me that Luke's already had some misgivings about the Jedi, the same as I have had since the prequel trilogy, starting to believe that the Jedi we're seeing may not be the true Jedi at all, that Qui-Gon was more than likely a representation of what the true Jedi are. Somebody that thinks about the living force and is less concerned with the politics and less concerned with having a seat on a council in this high spire overlooking Coruscant. It's more about being on the ground, being close to the force and being at one with it and being balanced. I think Luke had already started to lose faith in the ideals that grew out of that Jedi, of that Jedi sort of council and that period in the Jedi's time that brought about the rise of the Sith and brought about the corruption of the Chosen One. So I think he'd already lost his faith in that part of the religion, and I suspect what he was trying to do with his training academy was something very different. And that's just what I'm picking up from what I understand of the character of Luke, and the fact that if you consider that he may have had his doubts about the Jedi, I think what he was trying to build was something very different, but he still got lost in that persona. And this is where we meet Luke again now, that he got lost in the hubris, he got lost in his own legend, started to believe his own press, and that vanity was his undoing, which is essentially the way he was seeing the Jedi. And I think he started to see himself as a threat. I've said this before. I think he started to see himself as a threat. If Sidious could rise right in front of the Jedi when they were lost in their own hubris, then what was going to happen to him? And that's why I think he reacted the way he did to Ben, when he started to perceive Ben as a threat. It was extreme, because he felt that it needed to be a swift and sure action taken to stop history repeating itself, and he couldn't do it. And so history ultimately did repeat itself, and he did become Obi-Wan, and he did allow another monster like Vader to grow out of an error made through hubris and bravado and all of those negative things. So yeah, I think Luke lost his way, lost his faith in the Jedi, and that ended up bringing about the fall of the Academy. It wasn't just the Academy that was maybe the last straw, but I don't think it was just the Academy that triggered this loss of faith for Luke. I think it was already happening.
Can I interject?
Please do.
Is that losing faith with the Force or losing faith with Jedi?
That's losing faith with the Jedi.
But even though these are his misnomers, it sounds like he's, from that opinion, he's grouping everything into his mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's understanding his mistake through the lessons learned historically. To hear Ryan talk about it, he says it's about tearing down this concept of a god, so that you can get to the religion inside of it. It's to allow the religion to manifest itself through something much purer. So tear down the Jedi, because they become almost a Force idol, and the Force itself needs to come up and manifest itself in something purer. And maybe Luke saw himself as that when he established the Academy, but then learnt very quickly that it wasn't. He started to see an echo of what went before in the prequel era, an echo of that now in himself. And of course it manifested itself, and Ben became the next Anakin, the next one to fall and rise up as this dark influence. Rey represents the new emergence of something more pure, a new pure approach to the Force itself, without the Jedi in the way trying to define it.
That's cool. I think that's reasonable. I sort of see it similarly. I mean, it seems to me like he's almost kind of a window through which the fans view the Jedi, because we, like you said earlier, we've seen the side of the Jedi which is dogmatic and stubborn and set in their ways from the prequels.
Yeah.
And obviously we didn't get that in the original trilogy, because we were presented with a very sort of one-sided view of the whole affair. But actually it's more, it's not that simple. And this comes back to why I was a little bit annoyed they didn't spend more time with the grey themes. Yeah. Because it felt like they were building a really good film in which to do that stuff, and they didn't.
Unless they've left it still to be addressed. Because you're right. You're right in what you're saying. They did turn a wheel pretty sharpish to get us back to the meat and potatoes of Star Wars, which is the good guys and the bad guys. They did do that to get us back on track for the end of this film. But that doesn't mean that Rey won't explore that a little bit more, become more of a Qui-Gon, become more of a, consider where Qui-Gon came from. He was the student of Dooku, who was one of the Lost 20, who wasn't necessarily all dark. Sure, he wandered a little bit too close to the devil in the form of Sidious.
Yeah.
But his intentions were kind of good and honourable. And Qui-Gon comes from that stock. So that's almost like the lineage. If Rey adopts more of those, you might see her explore more of that grey area. She might come across as being a little bit more of a loose cannon like he did, a little bit more rogue when she explores those areas. Maybe.
I don't know if I have enough faith in JJ to give it that much depth based on Force Awakens. But I'd be quite happy to be wrong in that one. But I feel like it might be too late, even if you forget who's doing what in the film. I feel like it might be too late to explore those themes with any kind of degree of depth that will actually be satisfying to a cinema-going audience.
Yeah,
it's going to be it would be paying it almost lip service, and it feels like if you want to explore those kind of more nuanced themes, you need to give it a bit more time.
Yeah, unless that depends if you're going to wrap this series up with episode 9. Or
well, he kind of made it quite clear.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, you don't announce outwardly to someone who's up and coming in need of your help and so on and so forth. No, I'm not going to help you, and it's time for this to end. And he was, to be honest, fairly black and white, because I think he'd mostly lost faith. But I think Rey coming into his situation, his life at that point, she was enough for him to realise that there is there's enough of a little bit of this out there, there's enough of some of that out there, and enough of some of this for you to, hold on a little bit longer and so on. But he had, she was his U-turn.
Yeah.
I think, she had enough going for her, even from a point of view of just charisma, for him to understand, well, hang on a minute. Maybe I'm not saying, I don't want to extend the story in any sort of incorrect manner, but maybe this was the chosen one after all this time. Did we have it wrong and so on? So, I think, he had, yes, almost completely, I think, because, like I say, he was happy he seemed to be happy with the hermit's life, with and absolutely no interaction with it whatsoever, sort of thing. So,
yeah.
But interestingly, how often did he go back to the books? I wonder. We have no depth in that little part of the story, do we?
Not really. We know from the exchange with Yoda, we kind of get the impression that perhaps he wasn't that invested in the writings, and they became almost, again, the risk of repeating myself, they became a Force idol in a way, that they represented something.
Yeah, they were just iconic, but nothing more.
They'd become touchstones of something. They represented this ancient knowledge, but it wasn't something that Luke had ever taken advantage of. He'd never read it. He'd been very much guided by his own instincts. It's implied he'd been very much guided by his own instincts, and possibly guided by whatever he'd taken from Yoda and Obi-Wan after their deaths. But with regard to those things, they became totems, if you like, for the Jedi past, and he didn't feel like he was in a position to destroy them, which I think is why Yoda did that.
Was there also a tiny little inner part of him that was like, just hang on a little while, because these will be more, they'll be more worthwhile for someone else?
Possibly, yeah. But I do think it's kind of, stop worshipping these books. The things you haven't bothered to read, you haven't bothered to try and unlock the knowledge in them. Stop putting these things up on a pedestal. Let's get rid of them, forget them, and go back to the source, and go back to the Force, and connect and consider and ponder and ruminate on these things the way he was instructing Rey how to reach out and connect with the Force and feel it for what it is, this Force, this balance between all things. That's not written in a book. And so maybe when Yoda says to Luke, the girl has everything she needs, maybe he doesn't mean she has these totems, she has these icons of Jedi past. And what she has is the ability to connect with the Force and meet it on its own terms and use it or not use it as she sees fit. But not
which
worry
which we're yet to see. Who knows?
Which we've yet to see, yeah. And we're not worry about pages that are written that you don't even read. Because that's very much that's not the Jedi way, is it? No possessions, no connections. So it's kind of
Buddhist.
That is the thing, isn't it? There was I recommended this on the Daily the other day. There's a wonderful episode of Rebel Force Radio out there right now where there is a gentleman who's an expert in Eastern theology.
Oh yes, I think I've heard of this episode.
I think his name's John Marcoux.
That's the one.
He's incredible. What an incredible mind. What an intellect. And just listening to him talk about The Last Jedi and how much he read into what was written, it just adds layers to this thing. And it's just wonderful. And it's engaging and really, really, it's just mind-blowing what this guy brings to it. And if you haven't heard it already, I suggest hunting it out because it's fantastic. It's easily the best episode of the show they've ever done, these guys. Really interesting. Have you heard it, Rob?
No, I read about it on Roku Depot because it was his pick of the week.
Right.
Ping a link in.
And that he doesn't give that out lightly.
Yeah, I'll send you a link, Paul. Yeah, I will send you a link.
Please do.
It's first class stuff. Really, really good. And he's fascinating. And everything, the way he broke Luke down as a character, I just thought was really compelling. And not just Luke, but everything that hangs around Luke in terms of the way his religion has manifested itself throughout his life and what it means and how to deconstruct that and how Luke needed to deconstruct that to get back to the core. And the echoes there between the start of Luke's journey and the end of Luke's journey. It's beautiful stuff. Really, really beautiful stuff. First class podcasting, that is. But have we all had something to say on Casey's question there about Luke's lost faith?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Did we ask Rob this time or?
Yeah, we did.
Rob had his.
I just jumped in and just took it.
It's probably best to do that,
you.
especially when I've had a couple of beers while we've been recording. It's best to do that because I will not do a good job of driving this thing. All right, shall we move on to some news then? Solo, a Star Wars story news, opening things up for us this evening. So, Star Wars, a Solo, a Star Wars. See what I mean? Solo.
I like yours actually.
Yeah, should we do that? Solo, a Star Wars story trailer has reportedly gotten the IMAX DRM treatment. Does this mean the trailer is coming soon? Yeah, this came out the other day. Someone had tweeted at, I forget what the outlet was. Someone had tweeted at them saying, I reported on The Last Jedi's IMAX treatment, The Last Jedi trailer, and he was right apparently. And now he's aware that the Han Solo trailer has gone through the IMAX DRM process, which is they do their own sort of remastering of anything that's heading towards IMAX screens, so that it's pixel for pixel perfect for the presentation. So everything is a unique presentation in an IMAX digital theatre, and this trailer has apparently already gone through that process. So I think it's almost certainly coming. The question at the time was, will it hit with Maze Runner Death Cure, which is the big IMAX release this weekend? And the answer to that is no, it's not. The trailer hasn't even passed the MPAA and BBFC yet, the Solo trailer. And the way I know that is that the BBFC publish any movie
it's public record, isn't it?
Public record, and they do it immediately. And I did ask them back in the TFA days, would you ever hold back that information at the request of a studio? And they said no.
Yeah.
So when they've had the Solo trailer, and they have to have the Solo trailer before it will go into theatres, we will know about it because it will be announced by them. So that hasn't happened. But it is exciting to know that the trailer's been submitted to IMAX for DRM. And then it will be, once it's been processed by IMAX, it will be submitted separately. A bit like if you go to the BBFC page they will list a 2D version of a trailer and a 3D version of a trailer. Even though they're the same thing, they will each be certified as
separately
a certain classification.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting this week. Next up, there's a tweet out there. Dave Donovan shared this in the group, a tweet that teases some Solo A Star Wars story.
Have you heard of this guy
images.
before?
I have not. I did look. I read.
Are you following him now?
I'm not, no. But I read through the thread, and there was a couple of interesting responses in there. One looked like it was Emilia Clarke, but it wasn't. It was a spoof account that was posing as Emilia Clarke. But basically, this tweet shows somebody on stage at a convention with the Solo A Star Wars Story logo on the screen behind them. Mm-hmm. And the tweet said, well, Rob, you speak French. Can you read that? It has been decoded there, but...
Disney show... Oh, yeah, so Disney Devoile is... it's unveil. Wasn't 100% sure on that one. The first promising images of the next spin-off of Star Wars Solo. #lucky, #French convention, #French Live in Français, which is French film, and then at Disney box office.
Superb. Yeah, so apparently at this... Now, a follow-up tweet from this gentleman, I don't know how to pronounce his second name, Laurent Coué? Is that right, Rob?
Coué.
Which is cool.
Coué. No, it'd be like Moe, wouldn't it? Like the wine.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Coué, yeah.
Coué's got the accent. So this gentleman's a tweet further down in this thread said that he would not reveal what had been shown. His lips were sealed. So we've no idea what went up on stage, but I'm starting to get the feeling that Lucasfilm and Disney are testing some of the materials they want to use to promote Solo, and they're testing them in smaller markets, smaller international markets, just to see what the reception is before they go wide with it, which is coming. We know it's coming because the clock's ticking. So in Germany last week, they showed the electronic press kit, like a reel that had some footage and had some talking head stuff.
Yeah.
And then this week we're in France, and they're showing some images, which we can assume is most likely the cast in costume together, probably some stills from the set, and maybe some stills lifted from the movie itself, or certainly from the trailer itself. So they're going to do this so that they can gauge what the reaction is, and then they can alter their approach to marketing, I think, by the time they go international, which is most likely going to be around the Super Bowl. So
it's like almost like a focus group.
Yeah, a very large focus group. Yeah, and it's all done in a setting where it seems natural, then, doesn't it? Oh, look, we got this to show you, but it gives it's a bit like when we were at Celebration, Paul, and we saw the Rogue One trailer that nobody else has seen. You know, with Vader standing in front of that huge map and things like that. That stuff didn't go out, but it gave them an idea of how ready we were as an audience for this
made all
material.
the difference to us.
It made a huge difference.
1.6 seconds that everybody else didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. So that's the Solo stuff for this week. They're nothing solid yet, but we are certainly on our way. Last Jedi box office. This has been a little bit disappointing this week. So this was this morning's number. The Last Jedi box office is 1.297 billion. Position number 9 in the highest grossing movies of all time list.
It's been steady in number 9 for a few days, right?
It's still got a few miles to go yet, unfortunately. Yeah. Looking at earlier this week, we dropped significantly the week-on-week takings in theatres. It did jump up a little bit, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday. At the time of recording, it went back up slightly, but the per theatre average is $276 domestically at this point, which is pitiful. So cinemas are going to want that print out of their houses because it's going to start costing them money. When you think you could put Jumanji in there and do significantly more now, The Last Jedi is starting to take up real estate. And it's currently at half the theatres at the time of recording. It's at half the number of theatres it opened in just about 6 weeks of release.
Yeah.
Is that normal?
It's not bad for a regular movie.
It's not. Yeah, it's not uncommon for normal blockbusters. I think I think the thinking is it's kind of unusual for Star Wars because normally they have a bit more legs.
They do, and I think even if you look at something like Thor: The Last World, it didn't do as much money up front as The Last Jedi did, but I think probably over the period of release, Thor: The Dark World, what's the last one? Ragnarok. It did a lot more per house in the later days of its release. So I kind of think that The Last Jedi is probably, if it does get to position 8 in the all-time top 100, I'll be surprised. I think it might sort of stand fast now at number 9, because looking at the figures, I did a rough breakdown the other day. It's got something like a month left. It needs to do consistent numbers for a month to get to Harry Potter now, at the rate it's doing business at the moment, and I'm not sure that's possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, it's had a very good. I said before, nobody can argue that it's done badly.
No.
It may be done. You know, they may have expectations of how much they were hoping to take, which it hasn't met. But it's not to say it hasn't made a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the buzz from a lot of people sort of tail end of summer. This is going to be the biggest film ever made, because it was going to be, you know, hot on the heels of TFA. But, you know, it's odd, because for me, it's a better movie, but
I enjoyed
its reception has dwindled. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it is, you know, it is divisive. And divisive movies, you tend to find they get fewer repeat viewings.
Be interesting to know why people aren't going to see it because it's divisive, though.
How do you mean?
I just thought if people hear it's that divisive, you want to go and find out why.
Yeah, well, what I mean is, like, so Star Wars as a general thing, you get two kinds of box office money. You get your casual fans who go. It depends on the movie. They go once, maybe twice. And then they, you know, the hardcore fans go as many times as time allows. True,
the hardcore fans haven't gone again and again and again this time.
This is the thing. I think there's a decent swathe of the hardcore fans that haven't gone multiple times. Because I mean, I did 4 trips for The Force Awakens. I've done 2 for The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And actually, that was enough anyway. And I'd actually, to be honest, if it wasn't for the meetup, I probably wouldn't have been in a position to do. I wouldn't have thought to do a second viewing. Just because I felt like I got everything I needed from the first viewing.
And I think a lot of people are being influenced by the media narrative that surrounds this film's release, and how people have hopped on board it's almost like the hype train, isn't it, in reverse, basically, where you've got a lot of people that are coming out saying, no, this is not my Star Wars, and this should be, and you've got people re-editing it and taking all the ladies out of it and all that stupid stuff. And you got the media that jump on that, and they want to get some mileage out of it. And when they do that, it alters the narrative around the film's release. So a lot of people, casuals and hardcore alike, are thinking, I'm not sure I really want to watch this film die like that. You know, I don't want to watch this franchise die like that. I would rather stay away and let it happen quietly. And that, I wonder how much of that there is here, and I do think, you know, we've read a couple of emails this evening, and there's certainly been some turmoil in there that people have thought, well, I'm not really sure if this is for me anymore. And I know that was Stephen's position as well, wasn't it? When he was still on the pod, it was, I'm not really sure that this is my Star Wars anymore. I don't think my Star Wars is being made now, and that's fine, and that's a valid read. Yeah. That's a valid read on it.
Yeah, and I don't see that and I don't see, you know, any kind of reaction along those lines as an inherently bad thing.
No, and it's not a bad thing that the film's not being made for a 45-year-old man. It's not a bad thing. It's being made for its target demographic.
Yeah,
which has always been made for. When we were 5 and when we were 20 when the prequels come out, and now we're in our 40s. Some of us, Rob, are in our 40s when the sequel trilogy is coming out. It's fine. It's always been made with a core demographic in mind. And if that's not us anymore, that's okay. Some of us can get there, you know. Some of us can find the stuff to take out of it. And like Derek, we've heard him eloquently say this evening, it's okay that it's being made for a different audience. I can still celebrate it, but they're not my heroes anymore because we're not being affected, because we're not children anymore. We're not being affected the same way. We don't get that awe that we have when we were kids. That's all cool, but some people don't want to have to deal with that. They just think, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, and they stay away. But not, you know, it's still one of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, so they're not staying away in droves. It's just that final push to get it there, to get it to TFA numbers, just isn't there anymore. And you know, it's because that social event, that once in a lifetime thing, isn't there anymore. There hasn't been a 10-year break for Star Wars, so. Yeah,
the one thing to keep in mind as well, though, is if the 10 highest, are they pure box office revenue, or are they adjusted for inflation?
No, it's all pure. If you adjust for inflation, that list changes considerably.
Yeah, so if you look at so I've got the list in front of me now. Yeah, there is one film from outside the past 20 years in that top 10, and that's Titanic, and that's only a year off being included.
Yeah,
you know, there is more money, kind of. You know, there's the physical amount of money was almost, let's say, even if I look through the top, if I include Titanic as, you know, 20 years ish, I have to go down to number 26 before I find something further back.
Yeah,
you know, it's these modern films that are being made. In terms of revenue, they are grossing. You know, the way the world is now, the cinema is grossing higher because it's a higher revenue industry, and it's also a higher investment industry. So in terms of, you know, it's responsible for a larger volume of media, because obviously it's increased in popularity over the decades, and the budgets have got higher, thus the returns have got higher. It doesn't always follow, but you know, I would be interested as a sort of, you know, point of interest. I would be keen to find out how many of these, what their return on investment was, in terms of what they made back. Because I would be inclined to think that actually, if you were to go on that criteria, that list would be incredibly different.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure it would.
Because all of these movies in the top 10, especially, are massive blockbuster movies with massive budgets and enormous marketing pushes, and
that often aren't publicised.
No, indeed, and you know, let's be fair as well. There is a vocal media narrative in favour of Last Jedi, just as much as there's a fan dismay at this stuff. The fan dismay stuff gets a lot of press, but it's always from the point of view of the media narrative whipping against it. It's not, you know, I have yet to see a mainstream media publication come out against The Last Jedi. It's all, here's why you're wrong about this, and here's why this is true. This is actually great, and it's very kind of prescriptive and trying to kind of almost, it reads like it's telling you how to read it. It's
when you say a major outlet, though, Rob, what can you qualify that with an example? Because I see I see a lot of media outlets like Good Morning America and Sky News and things like that look down their nose at Star Wars as if to say, oh, look at all these little geeks getting upset because this film wasn't quite what they wanted. That's the kind of position that's being taken.
But that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's not, the media narrative is not framed in the context of justified backlash. It's framed in the context of everyone who doesn't like this film is a crybaby.
Yes.
And it's that same, it's a kind of bigger budget view of that same thing I was complaining about earlier, where people are, you know, if you don't kind of line up with me, you're just a crybaby. It's like, well, no, maybe they've just got legitimate grievances with the film, and you're being a bit of a tool by not hearing them out.
Yeah.
And sometimes sometimes they are just being, you know, difficult, but at the same time, it's hard and fast rule.
Your general audience, as Paul lovingly refers to them, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're more inclined to listen to the mainstream outlets that look down their nose at the Star Wars fans and say you're crybabies than they are to look at an outlet, even like EW, certainly not us, but even an outlet like EW or Slash Film, where you might get a more nuanced discussion about how how this film either fails or succeeds to deliver on fan expectation. Then they don't, like Joe Public, that we need their dollar to help this film, not help this film, because that's ridiculous, but look at the money it's taken.
Also interesting use of the word we. Like, we have, you, me and Paul have very little to do with this. We're not, it's what I've come back to about team sports, right? Mm-hmm. You're on Team Star Wars. Yes. And that's not, I'm not saying it as a knock. I just mean, I hear you say it in dailies and stuff, and you use the words we have to take this much money. It's like, we don't have to do anything. It's not my job to make this film take money. It's their job to make to make the film they want to make and hope that it's the best kind of fit for the demographic. Indeed, yeah. And I'm not cynically adopting that sort of language, but it is
genuinely, because I am, I don't mind if there's a team sports mentality about this thing, as long as it's healthy. And I'm in the corner of this movie, and I'm waving a big foam finger, hoping that it does well. So to me, it's just the same as when you hear some overweight guy with a goatee beard who's losing most of his hair, who's an armchair football manager, saying we need to score this many points to, and he's supporting his team. He's not going to chase it around. If he ran around that football pitch, he'd be done in 10 minutes.
Your sweeping generalisation aside.
Yeah, it is a sweeping generalisation. I'm fine, and I am lampooning it, and that's why the giant broad strokes, but that is what I am, basically. I am that person. I'm in my team's corner, and I'm hoping that it does it. And I know I don't influence it, and I don't have any impact on it, but I'm still behind it.
I'm not saying we have no impact whatsoever in terms of, I'm sure there are people who've listened to this show and who've, we've had emails to prove this, that they've, formed opinions on that, we've helped to either galvanize or reframe their opinions in ways they might not have considered. And so
we're
they
responsible for the $78 at the end of that figure.
Which is fine. I feel like that's a result personally. But yeah, it's, I understand what you're saying. I take your point about, the mainstream outlets. I'm talking about the kind of the more prominent geek-centered media.
Yes.
So like your IGNs and your
Nerdist
people, the Screen Rants and your Nerdists and stuff. And I'm talking beyond the ones who lampoon stuff and exaggerate for comedic effect, like When You Get the Honest trailer, and that'll be a fun day on the internet. But that sort of, when you get those people like that and Cinema Sins, whose job it is to nitpick, that's their gimmick, and that's fine.
And to sober us all up, it's like snapping their fingers in front of us.
And I guarantee you that the Cinema Sins and the Honest trailers will be rounded upon by this kind of defense force, because it will be that. The one thing I've noticed about people who defend this stuff viciously, I'm not talking about like yourself with a sort of, like you say, with a foam finger, I'm on the team. I'm talking about the people who are really kind of vitriolic about it. The ones I'm talking about, the tools bigger than some hardware stores can produce. They're going to be, they have no sense of humor about this stuff.
Yes.
And they're very, very defensive about it. Because like I say, for them, it's a personal attack, because they've got so much of this, their personality invested in this movie. And it's like, that doesn't, I'll walk that back, because it's that last bit I was going to go it's going to sound a little unfair, and it's not how it's intended. So I'm just not going to finish that particular sentence. But the perfect example is, you mentioned it earlier, the fan cut which removed the women. I thought that was hilarious, and actually I was really hoping that what would happen then is people would start. Did you remember they did that? I think it was last summer or like the summer before. There was a run of this movie, but every time they say this happens. They had B movie. Every time somebody says B, the movie doubles in speed, and it's about 8 minutes long, because it just speeds up by volume and volume and volume. By the end, it's like 1600% speed or something ridiculous. I was really hoping that this was going to start that trend. And for a while, it actually looked like it did, because somebody did a fan cut of Saving Private Ryan where all the men were removed. It was just a bunch of women looking sad at gravesites. It was about 2.5 minutes long. But I thought that was hilarious. And to say, I was, I was really dismayed when everything I read about this cut was, some crybaby man. It's like, the thing about the internet is it's really easy to kind of dismiss because of the anonymity. It's really easy to just pigeonhole and generalize, because you can just say, it's obviously some bitter crybaby man. It's like, you don't know that. It might be some satirist woman. It might be tinfoil hat time. It might be a media outlet trying to drum up controversy to get clicks, because that's what they do now.
Yeah.
And there's evidence of this I'm talking beyond conspiracy theory. I'm talking there is tangible evidence of media outlets fabricating these things and exaggerating these things to drum up a headline. And some of them get sued over it, So there's court records of these things too. But I was really, let's say, I was disappointed that it didn't become like a Reddit style or a 4chan style exercise in how silly can we make this. Like eventually, it got to the stage where people were rickrolling. So it was like, never going to give you up. But every time he says the word never, it doubles in speed. And I got rickrolled by that because I just clicked what turned out to be the video. And I went through about a minute and realized nothing had sped up. And I got bamboozled. And I was really hoping that would be the catalyst for that sort of thing. And people would kind of take the humor out of the situation rather than just an excuse to just sling mud at each other some more. I said a couple of episodes ago, and I know people have it's landed with a few people. What might turn me off Star Wars is not Star Wars, it's the fandom. And that works both ways, because I'm really, really disheartened by the attitudes and the antics of some of the people who, on both sides of the aisle, there's sort of extreme voices on either side who just sling fire at each other all day. Meanwhile, the rest of us in the middle are just, okay,
But why can't you just close the doors and enjoy the film on your own?
I can, but
so why would it turn you off Star Wars? That's my.
Well, when I say turn me off Star Wars, I don't necessarily mean much in the same way as I said about the trilogy doesn't catch fire.
Yeah,
it's not going to make me not watch. I'm never going to watch another piece of Star Wars again. I'm never going to buy any merchant. I'm never going to buy a Black Series figure.
Okay, but the broader social aspect of it would be.
It might prevent you from wanting to engage.
I would be, exactly. I'd be more inclined to put distance between myself and, that kind of more involved community, because I'm just really sick of some of them. Ultimately, it makes me sound crotchety and getting like I'm getting old, but it's because I am, and I am.
But this is a valid aspect of what we've just been talking about, right? The media narrative that surrounds this film has had not only a negative impact on its box office, but it's had a negative impact on your experience of Star Wars.
Yeah, but I don't think my experience and what I'm annoyed about is what other people are having the same experience with. Because, like I say, what I'm annoyed with is the attitude of the other side, who think just because my opinion is the quote-unquote right one, that gives me a right to be an enormous tool.
And that is the thing that's affecting your experience. So it is a different aspect of it, but it's the other side of it that's affecting your experience. Yeah, and I think that's an enormous shame, because it is. I agree. It is something I do want to be. The Star Wars guy. I am the Star Wars guy in most rooms, and I don't want that to change. I don't want to feel like I don't want anything to do with it, because it's just too much of an ugly subject. And it is kind of getting that way. It's not going to get me that way, but it is getting that way for a lot of people, where it's just, I don't want to watch this thing die like this in amidst like a bun fight of people just trying to score points off of it as it goes down in flames, which it isn't, because look at that box office. But
I say it's not a lot. It's not for now. It's not a loss-making movie. Now, whether that effect ends up kind of getting progressively worse as people get more and more, vicious and vociferously defensive and offensive, remains to be seen. Obviously, this is the first. This is not the first instance of it, because there was still a decent chunk of fans who were dismayed by Force Awakens for various reasons, some of which are valid, some of which are a little overblown. But that was the first stage of these things. I have friends who are huge OT fans who have watched all the new movies, and they've not liked them, apart from Rogue One. They really like Rogue One.
Yeah.
But that's because they've got That's exquisite taste. I mean, they've got me as friends after all. But I've seen this in people who are incredibly intelligent. So there's no risk of like, oh, you just didn't get it or anything like that. There's no. I can dismiss that kind of approach of the sort of, what's the word? I can dismiss that response as hokum because I know that person is intelligent enough to have got the points of the film. And actually, I alluded to it in my sort of extended thoughts in episode 100, but I don't think it's as intelligent as people seem to think it is, Last Jedi. I think it's actually deceptively simplistic, and it's projecting a lot of people are projecting a lot of intelligence onto it because, well, I don't know. I'm sure they have, there's various reasons, I'm sure, for why that is, but ultimately, I feel like it's actually quite a straightforward movie, and people are just reading, they're overanalyzing things to give things additional depth, which doesn't necessarily follow. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I think there's another conversation to be had there.
Probably.
We don't have time for this evening, but I do think that.
No.
Yeah, you're right that this movie there is some simplicity to it, and that's because there's an audience that is catering to that need to be able to just take some of those simple elements from it. And I do think that a lot of what we're interpreting now, we're projecting onto it, but there is a certain amount of skill and craft in making something that you can apply some experience of your own to it and take a different meaning from it. I think there's a lot in this film that's yet to be uncovered. Personally speaking, I think there's a lot. Like that thing on Rebel Force Radio this week, looking at it was with Eastern theology in mind. It's a very different experience. Those elements of it, and if you look at it again with Asian cinema in mind, and some of the stuff that inspired Ryan in the filmmaking, I'm sure there's more to take from it there, and that's a sign of a good film, I think. And if you can only take one thing from it, then there's not a lot of longevity in that movie. Not a Star Wars film, but there are movies out there where you're watching and you think, oh well, that did its thing, and then that's it, and you'll only ride that ride once. But here, I think there is a lot more to take. Now, whether or not we're reading stuff into it because we're bringing stuff to it, I don't know. But there is an element of skill to doing that with a film.
And to be clear, it doesn't, just because people read into it doesn't make that approach wrong.
No,
it's just one of those. It's one of those things where people will. I mean, it doesn't matter how prescriptive you are with spelling it out. People will still read stuff into things like, oh, well, I've seen it. Like people look at the canon stuff and they go like, oh, I don't really like that. I've decided it doesn't matter. It's like, well, it's not really how it works. But at the same time, if you want to do that, more power to you.
Yeah. And then that becomes their Star Wars experience.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is what I think is missing from the discourse is more acceptance of the fact that everybody can have a different experience of Star Wars, and that's fine.
Exactly, nuance is what's missing. Nuance,
and every discussion I've had, and I've had good discussions on Twitter about this. Every discussion I've had has been framed in that context, and the discussions have been that much better for it because nobody's come out of it saying, "Well, you're obviously this, or you obviously think that, and you're obviously just silly," and that sort of thing. No, people are just coming to it from the point of view of, this is what I thought. Yeah,
and that's the thing. You can't beat this. It's not a one-size-fits-all, this movie, and nothing is. And you're exactly right. What's missing from this conversation is nuance. And nobody's ever saying, well, this is what I took from it. They want to say, well, this is what is being given.
This is what's yeah, no, that is it. It's the same kind of mentality that drives these articles of here's why the Holdo maneuver actually is amazing and makes perfect sense and you're just stupid. It's like, no, you're allowed to think it's daft, and similarly, I'm allowed to think it's daft. I'm allowed to think it doesn't make sense. You by contrast, Mark, are allowed to think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I have no issue with you thinking that.
No,
I don't. I have no problem. It doesn't affect how I take it on.
Likewise, I did write a very lengthy defense of the Holdo
and I read it
maneuver, and
I read it.
To me, that came from a position of I'd like to understand what we're being asked to observe when we're seeing this thing. And so I'm fine if people just look at it and just think, oh, that's a cheat just to get them out of a corner. But on further study, I read a lot more into it and took a lot more from it, and it helped me appreciate it in a way that brings the rest of the saga into context. Because I don't think it needs to be, well, she's used it there, therefore it should have been used everywhere else. That doesn't mean anything to me.
No.
Because of when I considered it in the confines of the story of The Last Jedi, it made a lot more sense on its own terms.
Yeah.
But people can find that on the website anyway if they want to read that. And then, like we often say, mileage varies. To me,
Yes,
I got
very
more
much
out
so.
of the Holdo manoeuvre than you did, and probably than Paul did. So that's just the experience we've had. And there is an element of skill to creating a story that does that for people and becomes a unique thing to them. And that, like we said, that nuance is somewhat missing from this conversation right now. All right, let's move on, because we are running way longer than we should have just discussing this box office number. Paul, did you want to throw anything in before we move on to the Oscar talk?
I had no idea that I've been on mute for about 10 minutes and I've been interjecting furiously.
Did you just think we were ignoring you, Paul? I thought you were still dealing with that email that popped.
It's hilarious.
Oh.
I'm seriously sitting here with little
that's
tears of
wonderful.
happiness rolling down
That's
my face.
wonderful.
It's so funny. I'm sitting here shouting out expletives galore, and you would have been time coding it furiously. And then I look down on my Skype and I'm like, "You're muted, man."
Oh, what a shame.
Don't worry about it. Move on. Seriously.
I would have liked to hear what you had thought.
Okay.
I will do it offline.
Well, let's talk about Star Wars at the Oscars then. So this week it was announced that The Last Jedi has been nominated for 4 awards at the Academy Awards this year. The first is the original score by John Williams. The second is for visual effects. Ben Morris, Mike Mulholland, Chris Cornboard and Neil Scanlon all nominated there. Sound editing for Matthew Wood and Ken Kleiss, and sound mixing for Stuart Wilson. Oh, did I say Ken Kleiss? Sorry, Ren Kleiss. And Ren Kleiss again for sound mixing. David Parker and Michael Semanik for sound mixing. So 4 noms there.
Actually being called Ren. That's awesome.
That's cool, isn't it? The original Star Wars was released in 1977, received 10 Oscar nods and won 6. Empire Strikes Back received 3 and won 2. Return of the Jedi took 4 nominations with 1 win. The Phantom Menace got 3 nominations. I don't think there were any wins. This all came from StarWars.com, by the way.
Okay.
Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith both received 1 nomination. And The Force Awakens, which kicked off the current trilogy, received 5 nominations. The most since the original Star Wars in 1977.
No love for Rogue One, eh?
No love for Rogue One.
Very poor.
I wonder why that is.
Odd.
So what do we make of these? I mean, there is a discussion here that could be had about the fact that most of these things are technical and it doesn't ever get any consideration for the leads or the director, let alone picture itself. But what do we think? What's the most likely win, if any?
I don't know. The issue is now, I say nowadays, that makes me sound like I'm 112. But currently, with most movies in relation to Marvel and co, visual effects, sound editing and sound mixing, it's such a narrow and broad playing field at the same time. Those kind of awards can just go anywhere, absolutely anywhere. Guardians of the Galaxy, the Avengers stuff. You think of Thor, Ragnarok. These guys are probably a working mixture across these productions anyway. So it's so hard to tell which. You hit a ball. It's almost like the Academy hit a ball and one of them catches it. Seriously. Yeah. So I don't know. As far as original score is concerned, I'm not entirely sure. John will get it because of the work I've listened to with Desplat on Shape of Water, and a couple of others. So I'm not entirely sure. I also think, might be wrong saying it out loud, I apologise, but the Academy Awards are 1,000 times more political than the Golden Globes even knows how to be.
Oh, of course.
And Williams may well get it because his name's John Williams. and so on. So it's hard to tell. But at the same time, it looks like the Academy, judging by things like The Shape of Water getting a Best Film nomination, maybe they're going to be a bit art house this year and push the envelope open. I don't know, but it's really tricky. It's very tricky.
Do you think if Williams is going to win an Oscar this year because he's Williams, does it necessarily have to go to Star Wars, or could he be considered for something like The Post?
Is he on The Post as well?
He's on The Post, and then
he's on The Post. Okay.
And then you've got a Spielberg movie. Now I don't know if that's got a nomination. So
the thing is, Spielberg's generally he's also rejected, isn't he? Enormously.
Well, it was embraced with Saving Private Ryan, but I don't know. To me, the Academy Awards has always been very gun shy when it comes to these crowd pleasing blockbusters. Maybe with good reason. I don't know that. The criteria they apply to their decisions is beyond me, but it could be, that sounded more dismissive than I meant it, but it could be that they'll look at Star Wars and just think, there's nothing here for film, because it's a movie, but John Williams may be someone that they want to acknowledge.
He's the big flag, obviously, in this situation.
Now, I don't know how much of... I like The Last Jedi score, but there are some familiar things in there. There are some elements used from other movies. That might be a black mark.
Yeah, but he was very clever in the way he did it. He's masked them just enough for them to be semi-original.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that will be picked up by the people voting at the Academy. And if they wanted to award John Williams, they could do it for The Post, and that's all original work. And then they don't have to deal with the fallout from any accusations that Williams' work on Star Wars.
Well, it would have to be. He's not nominated for The Post.
Is he not?
No. So there's Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, The Shape of Water, Last Jedi, and three billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Oh, that's the other one, and that's the kid from the Blur, wasn't it?
Who's
not sure.
Is it?
Is it?
What's his name?
Carter Burwell is the composer.
What, Three Billboards?
Yes. Lots of the Coen brothers movies.
Right. Well, I wonder where they're going to go. With that.
That's interesting. I didn't know. I didn't realise he was up for one. The composer of... Oh, bloody hell, I've just had the movie in front of me and I've lost it. The composer of Phantom Thread is Johnny Greenwood, formerly of Radiohead.
Radiohead, that's what I was thinking of.
So he's nominated for an Academy Award. That's pretty impressive.
Wow, that is impressive.
Yeah. Post is nominated for Best Picture.
Right.
But not
all right.
Not Best Original Score.
If it's Williams, then if it's going to be the year of the Williams, then maybe
it will be this. Last Jedi then. Yeah, has to be.
I would be surprised. But it's, to me, I think the most likely nomination for a win here would be something to do with the sound mix or the sound editing for that silent moment during the Holdo maneuver.
Sound editing. So Last Jedi's up against Shape of Water again, Dunkirk again, Blade Runner 2049, and Baby Driver.
Yeah.
Sound mixing, same films.
Sounds pretty strong to me. I think Last Jedi will bag one of those two awards.
You reckon?
For that moment, for that use of silence.
No sound.
Yeah, I think that's...
Maybe. I mean, Shape of Water seems like it's really getting a lot of plaudits.
It's got the most nominations, if I recall.
I think you might be right, certainly up there.
It's a very unusual film. I mean, the only thing that's done this since is obviously Return of the King.
And then visual effects, they're up against Blade Runner again, Guardians Volume 2, Kong Skull Island, and War for the Planet of the Apes.
All of which are using completely asymmetrical technologies to produce their effects. So how do you possibly... That's where it becomes ridiculously subjective. So
for sure, yeah.
That's why it's such a broad...
That's why they have an academy rather than a bloke.
Just
one bloke.
An argument could be made for Andy Serkis in Apes there, couldn't it? For what he did, bringing Caesar to life.
I think to be honest, they should just stop the awards halfway through. And they should just invite Andy Serkis up on the stage to say, we just want to say you're one of the most talented individuals across the entire movie industry we've seen in years.
I can't wait to see him in Black Panther. Because they seem to be really putting him in a prominent role in there, and I can't wait.
Yeah, that does look good.
But he's just more explosive with everything he does. It's how does he keep doing it? He's insane.
Just look at his filmography. and
Yeah,
how
it's
many
ridiculous.
amazing movies he's been in the past 20 years.
But the passion he throws into each individual
He's wonderful. He's
performance
wonderful.
and production is insane. Seriously, I haven't seen a work ethic like it,
No, it's pretty impressive.
except for that Oldman chap.
What was the other one? Oh,
Yeah, he's
man,
pretty damn good.
What a treasure.
He is pretty good.
Oh man! So I'm just reading through these nominees for various different categories. Do you see that The Boss Baby has a nomination? Best animated feature. There must not have been that many this year. Because I'm sure it's a perfectly enjoyable movie.
What about Coco and Ferdinand?
Coco, they're both nominated. Yeah.
Coco will take that.
Yeah.
Coco will take that, I think.
I really want them to give it to Ferdinand so that they can, and they all come up to John Cena's music from the WWE, just like ba ba da da. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But then I have really weird taste in what would be an amazing Oscar moment.
You really, really do.
Yeah, clearly. I'm just having a look at some other stuff to see what else is interesting about it.
All right. Well, you do that. Interject.
Yeah, I'll carry on doing it.
Because I want to just get to the last point we have this evening because we're running very long, and I really wanted to shout this out because I'm finding this quite fascinating. There's a director named Reed Morano who works on Hulu's TV series The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
And she's been in at least one meeting with Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm after Kathleen had watched an episode of The Handmaid's Tale and asked about Reed's work. Now, many are suggesting that Reed is going to be shortlisted as a female director for a future Star Wars movie. But I've been speculating this week that, in fact, I think Reed might be lined up for a live-action Star Wars TV show that may or may not be heading to Disney's streaming service. Now, Reed has been commenting on the rumours during her time at Sundance this week, where her second movie, I Think We're Alone Now, has been shown, and I've put parenthetically in the show notes, it's not a Tiffany biopic. I thought that was important to point that out.
Yeah, I think that's useful. I think people would otherwise inevitably infer that.
That's immediately where your mind goes, doesn't it? And if it doesn't, then there's clearly something wrong with you. But
you mean your mind starts running just as fast as it can?
Yeah. Holding on to one another's hands. But she made a comment this week. She'd spoken to several outlets, but when she spoke to Kevin Smith for IMDb, he asked her, actually, she made a statement here that she said, I think there's just speculation of some kind. She said, I think I was lucky enough to have a meeting with Kathleen Kennedy, who's just the loveliest human being. And then Kevin cut straight to the chase and asked, are you going to direct a Star Wars movie? And she responded, no, I'm not. Will you stop adding fuel to the rumours? It was just a meeting, and that's all I can say. She was awesome and imparted a lot of her wisdom. She's like an idol. Now, the article goes on to point out that Reed may be involved in a Star Wars TV series, as I've been saying all week this week. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that this Star Wars talk surrounding Reed is starting to make a lot of noise when she's there trying to promote her movie. So I think that when she starts to bristle in these conversations, we have to try and understand that she's not short-tempered about any potential connection to Star Wars, is that this thing is starting to drown out this thing that she's taken to Sundance that she wants, obviously, to succeed. So what do you guys think? Do you know anything about Reed Morano? Because she was completely new to me this week.
I'm not familiar with her work, no, but I have heard nothing but good things about The Handmaid's Tale. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Paul, anything?
I'm looking now.
She's had one other movie, because this week I covered this on the Daily, and I looked at her IMDb very briefly, and she was worked in film as a cinematographer, and then dropped down
Kill
into
Your Darlings.
Handmaid's Tale. Was she cinematographer on Kill Your Darlings? Because she did a lot of that, and then she'd done a lot of directing work on The Handmaid's Tale and some other TV shows, and that's when I struck on, they're obviously courting her.
She was cinematographer on Kill Your Darlings, yeah.
Yeah, so I immediately thought, once I saw her experience as a director on TV, I thought they're courting her for the Star Wars live action show. That has to be what this is. And it's getting lost in a lot of noise around female director for a movie. This is the media narrative trying to make this thing into something that fits its agenda. But when you truly look at where Miss Morano's skill set lay, it complements perfectly what Disney and Lucasfilm want to do for the future of Star Wars. So even though, yes, I overlooked at first that she had a film called Meadowlands that came out in 2015, and this, her second movie, made its way to Sundance, and there's another movie I think it's either complete or it's currently in post. She is doing a lot of film work. I don't think that's what Lucasfilm are asking for her to be involved with, because even though these films may be indie darlings, they are not really the body of work that you'd expect somebody to take on a $200 million plus budgeted movie heading into theatres with the Star Wars brand on it. I think she is being courted for TV, where she will really become the cornerstone for a successful series. Does that make any sense to you, chaps?
Well, I mean, you talked about it on the day. Sorry, go on, Paul.
No, I was going to say possibly. I mean,
Okay.
I was just going to say, I mean, I can't add much more to it, but, you know, if her trick was initially from a cinematography background, it's the concern is the adaptation. How much is there?
Of the Star Wars material, because it's going to be original material.
No. Adaptation from cinematographer to how it works from a production for television.
Yeah, well, she's already made the leap over to director on Handmaid's Tale, so I think that there's probably, and I've built on this slightly with, I don't know if it was my written piece or on the Daily.
I heard that on the Daily.
That I think that there might be room for Disney to start using the Star Trek approach, where they usually take their talent and train them in other aspects of filmmaking. So whereas Reed Morano's moved from cinematographer on film to director on TV, she might then work into director on film, and the cinematographer on the film works his way back down. Well. Yeah, Episodes of Billions, which is a fantastic show. So I think I've entitled this piece "Read Watch" because I'm going to keep a really close eye. I think she's the most fascinating thing to happen to Star Wars in quite some time, actually, and I'm really excited by her involvement.
Yeah, I liked the way you put it in the Daily. You were talking about that they have a certain set of criteria that they have to use, that they're currently applying when it comes to choosing directors. And it would be odd for them to deviate from that, and it would be a little bit, it wouldn't quite be fair for them to deviate from it for any reason.
Yeah.
So, I think based on what you were describing in that, which you can find out about by becoming a patron,
or we could just repeat it here. I mean, I've given the gist, but there's a much more eloquent definition in the Daily Show itself. But I think it would be far better for her to kind of stick with what she's strong at the moment, and kind of ride that wave of good. Well, I'm glad you said that, because this is something that it's taking Miss Morano's strengths and using them to build something strong. And if she was being brought on as a film director, it would be perhaps putting her in a weaker situation because she hasn't managed a $200 million movie yet. Now, the criteria you were talking about, of course, is the one for them, one for me approach that we've seen some of these directors do. Someone like Gareth Edwards, I used it as an example, who makes a small movie like Monsters and then a huge movie like Godzilla, showing that he can do something that's character-based and then manage the budget of a small country. Now, I also used an example that Gwendolyn Christie said that Kathy Kennedy will not just appoint somebody into a position because of their gender. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. So for Kathy to consider Reed Morano, it means she's using her so that she can best utilise the skills that she'll bring to a project. She's not a figurehead for putting a lady at the helm of a Star Wars film. No. This is a woman she's going to use for her skills and what she can bring to a project. That which is a good way. Which TV.
Which is the best approach. Exactly. Ultimately, it's the best way to be, because if you're just choose based on merit, then you get good people.
Yes,
it follows.
It does. It does. I'm very excited by her. I can't wait to see what happens here. And if nothing comes of it, I think it will be a tremendous shame, because there's nothing but promise here. Promise of new corners of the entertainment industry being explored by Star Wars, and being led by somebody that's already cutting a swathe through it dramatically with a series like The Handmaid's Tale, which, like Rob, you rightly said, is getting extraordinary plaudits at the moment for how good it is. So there you go. That's a show. God, I'm knackered. That was a long one. That was
Warn you out, have we?
Did you chaps have anything you wanted to add to this before we call it a day?
No, good.
Yeah, all good.
Keep an eye on Reed Morano, everybody. She is important, I think.
I keep hearing Rick Moranis when you say that.
Yeah, I really don't mean that, though. All right, let's wrap this up then. So thank you for listening to Talk Star Wars again this week. Don't forget you can support us by becoming a member of our Talk Star Wars community by joining our Patreon campaign. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars for more information there. You can also help us out by leaving a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts and take advantage of our Ron Burgundy guarantee. Whatever you write in there, we will read as long as it's clean. So if you want to promote something like a blog or a podcast, that's a place to do it. You can email us your questions and your comments to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on one of our many social channels, such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and more. And with that said, gentlemen, where can people find you between shows?
You'll find me with the rest of the Star Wars clan and in the VIP lounge, etc. You'll also find me at moviescorenews.com.
Wonderful.
Cool.
That's it, Rob. Jump in.
Cool.
God damn it, man.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RobWadeVision, and everything I do that's not Talk Star Wars at emotionally14.com.
Wonderful. You can find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter at TalkStarWars. You should head over to StarWarsCommonwealth.com and check out some of our partner shows such as Tumbling Saber, Generation X-Wing, the Rogue Squadron podcast, the Skyhoppers podcast, the Nerd Room podcast, and San Diego Sabres radio podcast. I always get that so confused. San Diego Sabres, they're perfect. So head over to StarWarsCommonwealth.com and check out all those shows. They're knocking out great Star Wars content and they're well worth your time. Download the show notes, there's a ton of links in there, and we will catch up with you next week for episode 105D4. Now we've already named it. Perfect.
That's good.
Have a good week, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
the Tumbling Saber Podcast,
the Generation X-Wing Podcast,
Rogue Squadron Podcast,
the TSW Roundtable,
the Skyhoppers Podcast,
the Nerd Room Podcast,
and San Diego Sabres Radio Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com. Take your first steps to a larger world.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
All right, we've got a couple of reviews coming up now.
I'm going to put my plaudits away.
I think perhaps, Paul, you should take the... Paul, why don't you take the first 5-star review? Oh, let me just say, don't forget that if you want to take advantage of our Ron Burgundy guarantee, which is that whatever you write in a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts, we will read verbatim. So if you want to promote something like a blog or a podcast, that is where to do it. We lost Paul.
Lost Paul. I think he's accidentally disconnected. Hang on, let's bring him back in.
That's all right. We can jump back into the.
That
wasn't me.
He tried to mute himself. That's one way of doing it.
18 minutes.
He needs to drop out of the call and come back in.
Paul, drop out.
There we go. Dropped out now. Let me see if I can get him back in. I got him.
That's funny.
I've got him.
That is funny. I'm tempted just to sort of leave this in. This will be the bare bones episode.
Oh, I tell you what, mate. You are a thorough muter.
That's about.
I'm going to mute myself from the earth.
Yeah,
pretty slick, huh?
The only way to get more effective than that is to pack your bags and go.
The main thing is you didn't hear my coughing fit. So,
no, that's true.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay.
That is very true. All right. Let me just finish my. Let me just start again my little blurb about reviews, and then maybe I'll cut this out and make a half decent edit of it.
Maybe
you want 19.
Right, no, till Monday.
10
or Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
Paid.
Oh, we'll see.